"Oh, you didn't get one?" My wife's mother smirked. As my wife's family exchanged gifts at the Christmas party, everyone laughed. I smiled back. "That's okay. I brought something for you." The laughter stopped when they saw what it was. I should have known something was wrong the moment the invitation arrived. It came in November, weeks before Thanksgiving, tucked inside a cream-colored envelope with my wife Sarah's maiden name embossed in gold lettering across the seal. The Harrington family annual Christmas celebration. Formal, pretentious, exactly what I'd come to expect from Patricia Harrington and her carefully curated world of appearances. Sarah held it up to the afternoon light streaming through our kitchen window, and I watched her face do that thing it always did when her mother was involved. A subtle tightening around the eyes, a forced brightness in her smile that never quite reached the rest of her features. "It's at the estate this year," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Mom's really going all out. She's hired caterers, a string quartet, even an event coordinator." I was elbow-deep in dishwater, scrubbing the remnants of our simple Tuesday dinner, spaghetti and garlic bread, the kind of meal that would make Patricia physically recoil if she knew her daughter ate such pedestrian food. I didn't turn around, but I could feel the weight of what Sarah wasn't saying pressing against my shoulders like a physical thing. "That's nice," I said, because what else could I say? That I'd rather spend Christmas anywhere else? That the thought of sitting in Patricia's marble-floored mansion, surrounded by people who looked at me like I was a stain on their expensive furniture, made something cold and hard settle in my chest? We'd been married for 7 years. 7 years of monthly family dinners, where I was seated at the far end of the table. 7 years of conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. 7 years of Patricia introducing me to her friends as Sarah's husband Mark, never by name first, always as an appendage to her daughter, always with that slight pause before Mark, as if she had to remind herself what to call me. Sarah set the invitation down on the counter and wrapped her arms around me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. I could smell her shampoo vanilla and something floral and feel the gentle pressure of her cheek against mine. "I know they're not always easy," she whispered, "but they're my family, and you're my family. I just want everyone I love in one place." This is what I loved about Sarah. This is what I'd always loved about her. She saw the good in people, even when they showed her nothing but their worst. She believed in the fundamental goodness of human nature, in the possibility of change, in the healing power of time and patience. She was light where I had learned to expect darkness, hope where I had built walls of cynicism. I turned in her arms and kissed her forehead. "Of course we'll go. We always do." But here's what I didn't tell her. I'd stopped hoping years ago that her family would accept me. I'd stopped waiting for Patricia to look at me with something other than thinly veiled contempt. I'd stopped expecting Sarah's brother James to include me in conversations about business or sports or anything that mattered to him. I'd stopped trying to earn the approval of people who had decided on our wedding day. No, before that, the day Sarah first brought me home, that I would never be good enough. I was a high school English teacher. Patricia was a venture capitalist. James ran a successful commercial real estate firm. Sarah's father, before he'd passed away 3 years ago, had been a federal judge. These were people who measured worth in stock portfolios and country club memberships and the right last names. I had none of those things. What I had was a studio apartment full of books when Sarah and I met. I had student loan debt and a beat-up Honda Civic and a genuine love for teaching teenagers about metaphor and symbolism and the power of a well-constructed sentence. I had parents who worked hard their entire lives, my father in manufacturing, my mother as a nurse, and who taught me that dignity came from honest work and treating people with respect. None of that mattered to the Harringtons. The weeks between the invitation and Christmas passed in their usual rhythm. I taught my classes Romeo and Juliet to the freshmen, The Great Gatsby to the juniors, senior thesis preparation for my AP Literature students. Sarah worked her job at the nonprofit downtown, coordinating literacy programs for underserved communities. We had dinner together most nights, watched movies on the couch with our rescue dog, Murphy, sprawled across our laps. We lived a simple, happy life. But as Christmas approached, I felt the familiar dread building. Sarah started shopping early, carefully selecting gifts for each family member. She agonized over what to get Patricia, should it be the cashmere scarf from Neiman Marcus or the limited edition coffee table book about French architecture. For James and his wife Melissa, she chose an expensive bottle of wine and matching crystal decanters. For Sarah's younger sister, Olivia, who was finishing her MBA, a leather portfolio with her initials embossed in gold. I watched Sarah wrap each present with meticulous care, using thick, textured paper in cream and gold, tying each one with silk ribbons. She worked at our dining room table for hours, making sure every corner was perfect, every bow precisely centered. "What are you bringing?" she asked one evening, glancing up from a particularly troublesome wrap job on Patricia's gift. The question caught me off guard. Bringing? To the GiftExchange. Everyone draws names. "Didn't I tell you?" She frowned slightly, as if trying to remember. Mom sent out an email last week with the assignments. I felt something cold slide down my spine. I didn't get an email. Sarah's frown deepened. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her messages. "That's weird. It says she sent it to everyone. Let me check." Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Then she looked up at me, and I saw the flash of hurt in her eyes before she could hide it. "You weren't on the distribution list." "Of course I wasn't." "It's fine," I said quickly, seeing the conflict playing across her face. "I'll just get something general, something for everyone to share." But Sarah was already typing, her jaw set in that determined way that meant she was about to go to battle. "No, this is ridiculous. Your family, you should be included." She hit send with more force than necessary. 10 minutes later, her phone chimed. Sarah read the message, and I watched her expression go carefully blank, that same look she got when she was trying not to let me see how much something hurt her. What did she say? She said Sarah's voice was tight. She said the names were already drawn and it would be too complicated to redo them now. She suggested you just come and enjoy the party. Just come and enjoy the party. As if I would be a guest in my own wife's family home. As if, after 7 years of marriage, I was still an outsider who should be grateful for an invitation. I saw the tears building in Sarah's eyes, saw her fighting to hold them back, and I made a decision in that moment. I wouldn't let Patricia hurt her, not this time. I wouldn't make Sarah choose between defending me and keeping peace with her mother. I wouldn't put that weight on her shoulders. "Hey," I said gently, pulling Sarah into my arms. "It's okay, really. I don't need to be in the gift exchange. I'll bring wine or dessert or something. Don't fight with your mom over this. It's not worth it." Sarah pulled back, searching my face. "You're sure?" I smiled, and I made sure it reached my eyes. "I'm sure." But that night, lying in bed while Sarah slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside my chest. It wasn't anger exactly. Anger was too hot, too immediate. This was colder, harder. This was the feeling of a door quietly closing. Because here's the thing about being patient. There's a difference between patience and acceptance. There's a difference between choosing your battles and surrendering the war. For 7 years, I'd been patient. I'd smiled through the snubs and the microaggressions and the casual cruelties. I'd told myself that eventually, they'd see me as I was. That eventually, Sarah's love for me, my love for her, would be enough to bridge the gap. But lying there in the dark, I realized I'd been wrong. The Harringtons didn't want to see me. They didn't want to accept me. They wanted me to disappear, to become invisible, to fade into the background of Sarah's life like an embarrassing stain they could pretend wasn't there. And Patricia especially, had made it her personal mission to ensure I knew my place. The memory came unbidden, sharp and clear, despite being 2 years old. Sarah's birthday dinner at the estate. Patricia had hired a photographer to take family portraits. Professional lighting, expensive camera equipment, the works. I'd stood off to the side, watching as Patricia arranged everyone just so Sarah in the center, Patricia and James flanking her, Melissa and Olivia completing the composition. "Perfect," Patricia had said, smiling as the camera flashed. Then she'd glanced at me, standing awkwardly by the fireplace. "Oh, Mark, would you mind taking a few shots with just the family? We so rarely get everyone together, just the family. I'd taken the pictures, smiled and clicked the shutter, and told them how great they looked. And later, when Sarah had asked why I seemed quiet, I'd said I was just tired. Because what was the point? What was the point of telling Sarah how much it hurt to be excluded from her family photographs? To be treated as staff rather than as her husband? She would apologize, she would be hurt, she might even confront Patricia. And then what? Patricia would offer some insincere apology. Things would be tense for a month, and then we'd go back to the same pattern, the same subtle exclusions, the same careful cruelties. No, I wouldn't do that to Sarah. I wouldn't make her choose. But something had changed that night as I lay awake in our bedroom. Some part of me that had been bent and bending finally recognized that it was about to break. The days leading up to Christmas crawled by with an odd mixture of normalcy and tension. Sarah threw herself into preparing for the party, getting her hair done, buying a new dress emerald green silk that made her eyes look like sea glass. She was nervous, I could tell, though she tried to hide it. She wanted this Christmas to be perfect. She wanted her family to be happy. She wanted, though she wouldn't say it out loud, for them to see us as the unit we were. I wanted that too. God, I wanted that too. But I'd learned not to hope for things that had disappointed me before. On December 23rd, 2 days before the party, I walked into the small downtown law office where I'd been going for the past 6 months. The receptionist, Linda, a kind woman in her 50s who always asked about Sarah, smiled when she saw me. "Mr. Chen, right on time. Give me just a moment." I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by artificial plants and magazines from last year, and felt the weight of what I was about to do settle over me like a heavy coat. This wasn't anger. This wasn't revenge. This was something quieter, something that felt necessary in a way I couldn't fully articulate. This was documentation. This was truth. This was refusing to be erased. When I left the office 40 minutes later, I had a manila folder in my hand and a strange sense of calm in my chest. Whatever happened at the Christmas party, whatever new humiliation Patricia had planned, I would be ready. I would be ready to stop being invisible. I would be ready to finally be seen. The manila folder sat in my car's glove compartment for 2 days, hidden beneath the owner's manual and a stack of old receipts. I didn't tell Sarah about it. I didn't tell anyone. Every time I got in the car, I felt its presence, a quiet weight, a loaded gun. I wasn't sure I'd ever have the courage to fire, because that's what it was, really. Evidence, documentation. 7 years of careful, deliberate exclusion turned into something tangible, something that couldn't be dismissed or explained away, with Patricia's practiced smile and her honeyed words about misunderstandings. On Christmas Eve morning, Sarah was a flutter of nervous energy. She'd taken the day off work, and I watched her move through our apartment like a hummingbird, unable to settle. She reorganized the wrapped presents 3 times, adjusted her new dress on its hanger, called her hairstylist to confirm her appointment, then called back to move it an hour earlier. "You're going to be beautiful," I told her, catching her hand as she passed by the couch for the 4th time in 10 minutes. "You're always beautiful." She squeezed my fingers, but her smile was distracted. "I just want everything to go smoothly. Mom's been so stressed about the planning. Did I tell you she's having it catered by that French place downtown? The one that did Governor Whitmore's retirement dinner?" I hadn't known, but it didn't surprise me. Patricia didn't do anything halfway. If she was hosting Christmas, it would be an event worthy of a magazine spread, perfect and pristine, and completely devoid of anything that felt like actual joy. "That's nice," I said, because I'd learned over the years that sometimes the kindest thing I could do for Sarah was to not speak the truth about her mother. Sarah sat down beside me, finally still. Murphy immediately crawled into her lap, and she buried her fingers in his scruffy fur. "You know," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about what happened with the gift exchange, about Mom not including you in the email." My chest tightened. "Sarah." "No, let me finish." She turned to face me, and I saw determination in her eyes mixed with something that looked like guilt. "It wasn't okay. It's never been okay. The way she treats you. The way they all treat you. I know you say it doesn't bother you, but I'm not blind, Mark. I see it. For 7 years, I'd been protecting Sarah from this conversation. For 7 years, I'd swallowed the hurt and painted on a smile and told her everything was fine. Because what was the alternative? Force her to choose between her family and me? Watch her relationships fracture because of my wounded pride? But sitting there on our worn couch with Murphy between us and winter light filtering through our apartment windows, I felt something crack open inside my chest, something I'd been keeping carefully sealed. "I know you see it," I said softly, "and I know it hurts you. That's why I never wanted to make it a bigger deal than it needed to be." "But it is a big deal." Her voice broke slightly. "You're my husband. You're my family. And they treat you like I'm not good enough," I finished for her. "Like I'm a phase you're going through that you'll eventually outgrow." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry." "Don't." I pulled her close, felt her shake against me. "Don't apologize for them. You're not responsible for their choices." "But I keep hoping," she whispered into my shoulder. "I keep thinking that if I just give them more time, if I just keep showing them how happy we are, they'll come around. They'll see what I see when I look at you." I held her tighter and said nothing, because what could I say? That I'd stopped hoping years ago? That I'd finally accepted what she was still fighting to deny, that some people's minds were made up, their prejudices too comfortable to abandon, their need to feel superior too strong to overcome? We sat like that for a long time, Murphy snoring between us, the afternoon light shifting across our living room walls, and I made a decision. Not about the folder in my car, that decision was already made, had been made the moment I'd walked out of that law office. But about this moment, about Sarah, about how much I was willing to let her hurt for people who would never hurt for her. "I love you," I said finally. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. Everything I do, everything I've ever done, it's because I love you." She pulled back, wiping her eyes, and gave me a confused smile. "That's a weird thing to say. What's going to happen tomorrow?" I kissed her forehead. "Nothing. I'm just being sentimental. It's Christmas." But I saw the question in her eyes, the slight furrow in her brow. Sarah knew me too well. She could sense when I was holding something back. Still, she didn't push. That was Sarah's gift, and her curse. She trusted people to tell her the truth when they were ready, even when that trust left her vulnerable to lies. The rest of Christmas Eve passed in a blur of last-minute preparations. Sarah went to her hair appointment and came back with her dark hair styled in soft waves. I wrapped the bottle of expensive scotch I'd bought for James, the cashmere scarf for Melissa, the book on art history for Olivia. Generic gifts. Safe gifts. The kind of presents you give to people you don't really know, and who don't really know you. That evening, we had our own small celebration, just the two of us and Murphy. We ordered Chinese takeout and watched It's a Wonderful Life on our old television. And for a few hours, I let myself exist in the bubble of our life together, untouched by tomorrow's looming expectations. Sarah fell asleep on my shoulder halfway through the movie, her breathing deep and even. I carefully extracted myself, carried her to our bedroom, tucked her in. Then I stood in our doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep, memorizing the peaceful expression on her face. Because I knew with a certainty that felt like prophecy, that after tomorrow, something between us would be different. Not broken, I hoped, not damaged beyond repair, but different, changed in a way we couldn't undo. I walked out to my car, the December air sharp and cold against my face. The neighborhood was quiet, Christmas lights twinkling on houses up and down the street, the kind of picture-perfect scene that felt like it belonged in a movie rather than real life. I opened the glove compartment and pulled out the manila folder. Inside were documents I'd spent 6 months collecting, organizing, documenting, every family gathering I'd been excluded from. Every photograph I'd been cropped out of or never invited into in the first place. Every email chain about family decisions that had mysteriously never made it to my inbox. Every dinner seating chart that placed me as far from the center of the table as physically possible. But the documents went deeper than that. They showed a pattern, a deliberate, systematic pattern of financial exclusion that I'd only begun to understand in the past year. When Sarah's father died 3 years ago, he'd left a substantial estate. I'd never asked about the details because it felt wrong, invasive, like I was some kind of gold digger interested in Sarah for her money. But last spring, Sarah had mentioned something in passing, something about a family trust her father had established, something about annual distributions to his children and their spouses. Their spouses? I'd asked carefully. Well, James and Melissa, Sarah had said, and me and you. It's supposed to help with mortgage payments, retirement savings, that kind of thing. Dad wanted to make sure we were all taken care of. But I'd never seen any trust distribution. I'd never seen any documentation, never been asked to sign anything, never been included in any conversation about it. At first, I'd assumed it was an oversight. Then I'd started to wonder if Sarah had decided to keep it separate, which was fine, it was her family's money, after all. But then, 3 months ago, I'd overheard a phone conversation. Sarah had been in the bedroom, talking to her mother, and I'd been in the kitchen making dinner. The walls in our apartment were thin. Mom, I've told you, I'm not doing that. Mark is my husband. If there's a distribution from Dad's trust, it includes both of us. That's what Dad wanted, he specifically said, and their spouses. A long pause, then Sarah's voice, tight with frustration. I don't care if you think it's complicated. It's not complicated. We're married. We file joint taxes. We share everything. If you want to give me money from the trust, you need to acknowledge that Mark is part of that equation. Another pause. No, I won't just accept it in my name only. That's not how marriage works. I'd stood frozen in our kitchen, a knife in my hand, carrots half chopped on the cutting board, and felt something crystallize in my mind. It wasn't just social exclusion. It wasn't just Patricia's snide comments, or James's dismissive attitude. It was financial. Systematic. They were literally trying to write me out of Sarah's life. The next day, I'd made an appointment with a lawyer. Now, sitting in my cold car on Christmas Eve, I looked through the documents again. The lawyer had been thorough. There were copies of her father's trust documents, public record, since the estate had gone through probate. There were copies of distribution records showing annual payments to James and Melissa listed as joint recipients, but payments to Sarah listed only under her name, despite identical language in the trust document specifying "and their spouses." There were email records. Sarah had forwarded them to me after that phone call, wanting me to see what she was dealing with. Patricia's careful legalese. Her suggestions that Sarah should maintain financial independence and protect her inheritance. James chiming in with concerns about asset protection and family wealth management. And there, in black and white, the pattern I'd felt, but never been able to name. The Harringtons weren't just making me feel unwelcome. They were actively working to ensure that I remained financially separate from Sarah, that no matter how long we were married, no matter how solid our relationship, I would always be the outsider who hadn't contributed to the family wealth. The irony was almost funny. I'd never wanted their money. I'd never asked about it. Never expected it. Never factored it into any decision Sarah and I had made together. We lived on our combined salaries, hers from the nonprofit, mine from teaching. We saved carefully, budgeted thoughtfully, made choices based on what we could afford together. But this wasn't about the money. It never had been. This was about respect. This was about them seeing me as Sarah's partner, as an equal member of the family, as someone worthy of basic human dignity. And they had failed that test at every turn. I closed the folder and sat in the darkness, my breath fogging the windshield. Tomorrow, I would walk into Patricia's perfectly decorated house with my carefully wrapped generic presents and my practiced smile. I would endure whatever new humiliation she had planned, because there would be one, there was always one. The forgotten name tag at the dinner table, the family toast that somehow neglected to mention me, the photographs that would be taken and later displayed, all featuring Sarah but none featuring me. But this time I would be ready. This time, when Patricia made her move, when she delivered whatever cutting remark or calculated exclusion she had planned, I would have a choice to make. I could smile and swallow it as I always had. Or I could open that folder and finally make them see what they'd been doing. Make them confront the pattern of their cruelty. Make them acknowledge that I existed, that I mattered, that I was Sarah's husband, whether they liked it or not. I wasn't sure which choice I would make. The decision felt too big, too heavy, too permanent. Because once I opened that folder, once I put those documents on Patricia's expensive mahogany table or handed them to Sarah in front of her family, there would be no going back. The facade of civility would shatter. The careful dance we'd all been doing for 7 years would end. And Sarah, who loved her family despite their flaws, who kept hoping they'd change, who believed so deeply in the power of patience and forgiveness, Sarah would have to finally see her family clearly. Not through the rose-colored lens of daughterly love, but in the harsh light of documented, systematic exclusion. Would that truth set her free? Or would it break something inside her that could never be repaired? I didn't know. And sitting there in my car on Christmas Eve, the manila folder in my lap, and my wife sleeping peacefully inside our apartment, I felt the full weight of that uncertainty pressing down on my chest like a physical thing. Tomorrow would come regardless of whether I was ready for it. Patricia's party would happen, with its catered French food and string quartet and carefully selected guest list. The gifts would be exchanged, the toasts would be made, the photographs would be taken. And somewhere in the middle of all that careful choreography, there would be a moment I could feel it coming like a storm on the horizon when Patricia would make her move. When that moment came, I would have to decide. Silence or truth, protection or exposure, the life we'd been living, or something new and uncertain, and possibly devastating. I put the folder back in the glove compartment, locked the car, and walked back inside. Sarah was still sleeping, Murphy curled at her feet. Our little Christmas tree, a modest 5-footer we decorated together with mismatched ornaments collected over the years, glowed softly in the corner. This was our life, simple, real, built on love rather than money or status or the right last name. Whatever happened tomorrow, I needed to remember this. This was what mattered. This was worth protecting. But so was my dignity. So was the truth. I just hoped that when the time came, I'd know which one to choose. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made everything look sharp-edged and brittle. Sarah was up before dawn, and I woke to the sound of her moving through the apartment, the shower running, the hairdryer humming, the quiet rustle of tissue paper as she checked the wrapped presents one final time. I lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the day ahead settle over me like a shroud. The manila folder was still in my car. I hadn't decided yet. Maybe I wouldn't need to decide. Maybe today would be different. Maybe Patricia would surprise me with basic human decency. But I'd learned not to bet on maybes when it came to the Harringtons. "Morning," Sarah said, appearing in the doorway with a coffee mug in each hand. She was already dressed, her emerald silk dress catching the early light, her hair perfect, her makeup carefully applied. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her eyes that meant she hadn't slept as well as I'd thought. "You look beautiful," I said, accepting the coffee and sitting up. She smiled, but it was thin, anxious. "I'm nervous. Isn't that ridiculous? It's just Christmas with my family. I shouldn't be nervous." But she should be. We both should be. Because Christmas with the Harringtons was never just Christmas. It was a performance, a test, a carefully orchestrated event where everyone played their assigned roles and deviated from the script at their peril. I showered and dressed in the outfits Sarah had helped me pick out: charcoal slacks, a deep blue button-down, a sports jacket that had cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but that Sarah insisted made me look distinguished. I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw what I always saw before these family gatherings: a man preparing for battle, armor on, defenses up, smile practiced and ready. We loaded the presents into Sarah's car. Her sedan was nicer than my aging Honda, more appropriate for the Harrington driveway where Mercedes and BMWs congregated like expensive livestock. The drive to her mother's estate took 40 minutes, and we spent most of it in silence, Sarah's hand in mine, her thumb tracing anxious circles on my palm. The Harrington estate sat on 5 acres outside the city, a sprawling colonial-style mansion that Patricia had purchased after her husband's death. Too many memories in the old house. She'd told Sarah, though I suspected the real reason was that the old house hadn't been grand enough. Hadn't made the right statement about her status as a successful venture capitalist and widow of a federal judge. The circular driveway was already full of cars when we arrived. James's black Range Rover, Melissa's white Lexus, Olivia's Tesla, a graduation present from Patricia that had cost more than I made in a year, and other vehicles I didn't recognize, which meant Patricia had invited additional guests. Of course she had. Why have a simple family Christmas when you could turn it into a social event? Sarah's hand tightened on mine as we approached the front door. Before we could knock, it swung open, and there was Patricia, resplendent in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than our monthly rent, her blonde hair styled in soft waves, her smile wide and welcoming and utterly false. "Sarah, darling." She pulled Sarah into an embrace, air-kissing both cheeks. "You look absolutely stunning. That dress is perfect on you." Then her eyes slid to me, and the warmth drained from her expression like water down a drain. "Mark, how nice that you could make it." As if I'd had a choice. As if I wasn't her daughter's husband. "Merry Christmas, Patricia," I said, keeping my voice even. She didn't respond, just turned back to Sarah, linking her arm through her daughter's and pulling her inside. Come, everyone's in the great room. We're having champagne and caviar." James brought back the most divine bottles from his Napa trip. I followed behind them, carrying the presents, and tried not to feel like a servant trailing his betters. The interior of the house was exactly as I'd expected, decorated within an inch of its life. A massive Christmas tree dominated the great room, easily 12 feet tall, adorned with what looked like professionally placed ornaments in a coordinated color scheme of gold and white. Garlands draped every surface. Candles flickered on every flat surface. A string quartet, actual musicians in formal attire, played softly in the corner. The room was full of people. I recognized most of them: family, friends, business associates, a couple of Patricia's venture capital partners. Everyone dressed impeccably. Everyone holding crystal champagne flutes. Everyone performing affluence with practiced ease. James spotted us first. He was standing by the fireplace, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his champagne, looking every inch the successful businessman in his tailored suit. "Sarah!" He crossed the room and hugged his sister. Then he turned to me and extended his hand, not for a handshake, but to take the presents I was carrying. "Let me get those for you." Not a greeting, not a Merry Christmas, Mark, just taking the packages from my hands as if I were a delivery person. I released the presents and watched him carry them to an elaborate gift table set up near the tree, where dozens of beautifully wrapped packages were already displayed, like an art installation. "Mark, darling, there you are." I turned to find Melissa approaching, James's wife, a stunning blonde who worked in pharmaceutical sales and who had always been carefully polite to me in that way that meant she'd been coached by Patricia on proper behavior. She air-kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. "Merry Christmas, Melissa. And to you? Isn't this just gorgeous?" She gestured at the decorations with her champagne flute. Patricia really outdid herself this year. The caterers are from Le Bernardin, did you know? The executive chef came personally to oversee the menu. I didn't know. I wouldn't have known, because no one had thought to include me in any of the planning conversations, any of the excited emails, any of the family group chats where these details were discussed. Sarah appeared at my side, pressing a champagne flute into my hand. "Let me introduce you around," she said quietly, and I could hear the apology in her voice, could see her trying to smooth over the familiar awkwardness of my arrival. We made the rounds. Patricia's business partner, Richard, and his husband, Thomas, the Wainwrights, neighbors who Patricia played tennis with, Senator Morrison, retired, and his wife, Eleanor. Everyone was gracious. Everyone smiled. Everyone said the right things. But I could see it in their eyes, the quick assessment, the subtle dismissal, the unspoken question: who is this man, and why is he here? I'd become expert at reading these reactions over the years. The slight pause when Sarah introduced me as her husband, as if people needed a moment to recalibrate their expectations. The way conversations shifted when I joined them, becoming more superficial, more careful, as if my presence required a different language than the one they'd been speaking moments before. Olivia found us near the hors d'oeuvres table, elaborate arrangements of food I couldn't name, presented on crystal platters. She hugged Sarah, then turned to me with a smile that was warmer than most. "Hey, Mark, how's teaching? Still corrupting young minds with dangerous literature?" It was an inside joke between us, something that had started at a family dinner 2 years ago when I'd defended teaching The Handmaid's Tale to seniors. Patricia had been horrified. "Isn't that rather inappropriate?" But Olivia had laughed and said anyone trying to ban books was on the wrong side of history. "Always," I said, grateful for the moment of genuine connection. "How's the MBA program?" "Brutal. I'm drowning in case studies and financial modeling. But," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "I'm actually really loving it. Don't tell Mom, but I might go into nonprofit finance after I graduate. Work with organizations like Sarah's." "That would be amazing," Sarah said, lighting up. "You should talk to my boss. She's always saying we need more people who understand both the mission side and the money side." "Yeah, well, first I have to survive Mom finding out I'm not planning to join her firm," Olivia grimaced. "She's already planning my corner office." We chatted for a few more minutes, and I felt some of the tension in my shoulders ease. This was why it was so complicated. It wasn't all bad. Olivia was kind. Sarah's father, before he died, had always treated me with respect. Even James, when he wasn't performing for Patricia, could occasionally be almost friendly. But the good moments made the bad ones harder to bear, because they showed that the cruelty was a choice, not an inevitability. "Attention, everyone." Patricia's voice cut through the conversations, and the room quieted. She stood near the Christmas tree, champagne flute raised, her smile radiant. The string quartet fell silent. "I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate this special day with our family. Christmas has always been a time for us to gather, to reflect on our blessings, to remember those we've lost." Her voice caught slightly, a practiced show of emotion for her dead husband, and to celebrate the bonds that hold us together. People murmured appreciatively. I saw James put his arm around Melissa, saw Olivia smile at her mother, saw Sarah's face soften with that familiar hope that maybe this year would be different. "We have a wonderful day planned," Patricia continued. "Dinner will be served at 4. Until then, please enjoy the champagne, the music, and each other's company. And later, we'll do our family gift exchange, a tradition that's become so meaningful to all of us." Her eyes swept the room, touching on each family member. They landed on Sarah, held for a moment with genuine warmth. Then they moved to me. And I saw it, the brief flash of something cold and calculating before her smile returned, professional and empty. "Merry Christmas," she said, raising her glass higher. "Merry Christmas," the room echoed back. The quartet resumed playing. Conversation started again, and I stood there with my champagne, feeling the weight of that look Patricia had given me, knowing with absolute certainty that whatever she had planned, it was coming soon. The next few hours passed in a blur of forced socialization. I talked to people whose names I'd forget by tomorrow. I smiled until my face hurt. I ate hors d'oeuvres I didn't want, and drank champagne that tasted like expensive regret. Sarah stayed close when she could, but family obligations pulled her away. Patricia needed her opinion on the dinner menu. James wanted to talk about some business venture. Olivia needed advice about a professor. Each time Sarah left my side, I felt more exposed, more obviously out of place. I tried to engage with the other guests, but the conversations were all about things I had no context for. Vacation homes in the Hamptons, recent gallery openings, stock portfolios, and investment strategies. I was a high school English teacher. My last vacation had been a road trip to a cabin in the mountains. My investment strategy was a modest $401k and hoping I could retire before I was 70. Around 2 o'clock, I found myself standing alone near the windows, overlooking Patricia's manicured back lawn. Snow had started falling, soft and silent, coating everything in white. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt isolating, like I was watching the world from behind glass, separated from something I could see but never quite touch. It's quite a spectacle, isn't it? I turned to find Senator Morrison standing beside me, his own champagne glass nearly empty. He was older, maybe 75, with kind eyes and an air of someone who'd spent a lifetime watching people perform. "It's beautiful," I said carefully. He chuckled. "That's a diplomatic answer. Patricia does love her presentations. Though I have to say I miss the old days, when Christmas was just family sitting around a fire, eating too much, and telling stories." "That sounds nice," I said, and meant it. He studied me for a moment. "You're Sarah's husband, Mark, isn't it?" "Yes, sir. I taught Sarah when she was young. Debate club sponsor at her prep school. Brilliant girl, that one. Passionate, principled. Her father and I used to joke that she'd end up either changing the world or driving us all crazy trying." He smiled at the memory. "And she married a teacher. An English teacher, if I remember right." "That's right." "Good for her." He nodded approvingly. "My wife was a teacher, 40 years in public schools. Best person I ever knew." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "It's not always easy, being the person who doesn't fit the expected mold. People have their ideas about how things should be, who should be with whom. They can make their judgments and their exclusions seem so natural, so reasonable, that you start to wonder if maybe you're the problem." I looked at him sharply, and he met my gaze steadily. "But you're not the problem, son. Don't ever let them make you believe you are." Before I could respond, Patricia's voice rang out again. "Everyone, if you could make your way to the dining room, dinner is about to be served." The senator patted my shoulder once, then moved toward the dining room with the rest of the guests. I stood there for a moment longer, his words echoing in my head, feeling something crack open in my chest, something that felt like validation, like permission, like someone finally seeing what I'd been trying so hard to pretend didn't hurt. I took out my phone and sent a quick text. "I need to go to my car for a minute. Be right back." Then I headed for the front door, my heart pounding, my decision crystallizing with each step. The manila folder felt heavier than it had before. Or maybe I just felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of pretending. When I walked back inside, Patricia was directing people to their seats at an enormous dining table that must have seated 24. The food was being brought out by the catering staff, course after course of elaborate dishes that probably had French names I couldn't pronounce. Sarah caught my eye across the room and smiled, though I could see the worry there too. She could sense something had shifted, even if she didn't know what. I smiled back and mouthed, "I love you," because whatever was about to happen, whatever choice I was about to make, that was the one thing that mattered. That was the one truth that couldn't be taken away or diminished or explained away by people who decided I wasn't good enough for their daughter, their sister, their carefully curated family portrait. I took my seat at the far end of the table, of course, as far from Patricia as the geometry of the room allowed, and waited for whatever came next. The folder sat in my jacket pocket, a weight against my heart, a promise or a threat, depending on how you looked at it. Soon, I thought, soon I would know which one it was. The dining room was a masterpiece of calculated elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the long mahogany table, which was dressed in cream linens and set with china so fine I was afraid to touch it. Each place setting had multiple forks, multiple knives, multiple glasses, a test I'd learned to navigate over the years, though I'd grown up eating dinner on mismatched plates at a kitchen table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under one leg. I found my name card at the far end of the table, exactly where I'd expected it. To my left was an empty seat, someone who hadn't arrived yet or hadn't been seated. To my right was Thomas, Richard's husband, who smiled at me kindly as we sat down. Sarah was seated near the middle, between her mother and James. From where I sat, I could barely see her face unless I leaned forward conspicuously. The message was clear. This was a family table, and I was peripheral to that family, acceptable only on the margins. But what struck me most was the empty seat beside me. Every other chair was filled Patricia's business associates, the Wainwrights, Senator Morrison and his wife, even a few people I hadn't been introduced to. 23 people seated at a table set for 24. 23 people, and one empty chair next to the outsider. "The poached pear and gorgonzola salad," announced one of the catering staff, a young woman in black and white who moved with practiced efficiency. Plates were set before each of us, arrangements of food so artfully composed they looked like something from a cooking show. Patricia stood, her champagne glass raised. "Before we begin, I'd like to say a few words." The table quieted. All eyes turned to the head of the table, where Patricia stood bathed in chandelier light. Every inch, the matriarch, the successful businesswoman, the keeper of family traditions. 3 years ago, we lost a man who was the foundation of this family. William was a father, a husband, a judge, and a friend to so many gathered here today. He believed in family above all else, in loyalty, in legacy, in maintaining the bonds that define us. I watched Sarah's face soften, saw her blink back tears. This was Patricia's power. She knew exactly which emotional strings to pull, exactly how to make herself the hero of every story. "William would be so proud of what we've built, what we've maintained, what we've protected." Patricia's eyes swept the table. "James has expanded the family business. Olivia is pursuing her MBA with the same brilliance her father showed in law school. And Sarah," her voice grew warm, maternal. "Sarah continues to do work that matters, helping those less fortunate, staying true to the values her father instilled in her." Values her father instilled, not values we built together, not values she chose for herself. The implication was clear. Sarah was still fundamentally a Harrington, still shaped by her family's mold, still redeemable despite her choices like me. So today, I want us to remember what binds us together. Family is everything. Family is forever. And we must protect what our family has built, protect our legacy, protect each other from anything that might threaten what we hold dear. She raised her glass higher, to family, to loyalty, to the Harringtons. "To the Harringtons," the table echoed. I lifted my glass mechanically, but the champagne tasted like ash in my mouth, because I understood what Patricia had just done. She delivered a mission statement, a reminder, a warning. We must protect what our family has built, protect each other from anything that might threaten what we hold dear. And I was the threat. I'd always been the threat. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I existed outside their carefully constructed world, because I represented a different set of values, because I'd married Sarah not for her money or her connections or her last name, but because I loved her. And that love, that genuine, simple love, was the most dangerous thing of all to people like Patricia, because it suggested that maybe, just maybe, all their wealth and status and careful social positioning meant nothing compared to something as basic and radical as two people choosing each other. The dinner progressed through multiple courses. The poached pear salad gave way to butternut squash soup, which gave way to a fish course I couldn't name, which gave way to the main course, herb-crusted rack of lamb with some kind of reduction sauce that probably cost more per plate than I spent on groceries in a week. Conversations flowed around me, business talk, mostly. James held court about a commercial development deal he was closing. Richard discussed emerging markets in biotech. Patricia offered insights on venture capital trends, dropping names of companies and CEOs with casual familiarity. I ate my food and said little. Thomas tried to engage me a few times. He asked about teaching, seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts on education policy, but the conversations kept getting pulled back to the center of the table, to the Harringtons and their world. Halfway through the main course, I caught Sarah's eye. She mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded and smiled, but I could see she didn't believe me. She knew me too well. She could read the tension in my shoulders, the tightness in my jaw, the way I'd retreated into myself, the way I always did at these gatherings. She started to rise, as if to come to me, but Patricia's hand on her arm stopped her. I watched Patricia lean close to Sarah, whisper something that made Sarah's expression cloud with confusion, then frustration, then reluctant acceptance. Whatever Patricia had said, it had been effective. Sarah settled back into her seat, but her eyes kept finding mine across the table, worried and apologetic. Dessert arrived: individual chocolate soufflés with raspberry coulis and gold leaf garnish. Gold leaf. On Christmas dessert. I would have laughed if my chest hadn't felt so tight. "Exquisite as always, Patricia," Senator Morrison said, setting down his fork. "Though I have to say, I miss your mother's traditional plum pudding. Do you remember? She'd light it on fire at the table, and we'd all hold our breath, hoping she wouldn't set the curtains ablaze." Patricia's smile was tight. Mother had her charms, but I prefer a more refined approach to the holidays. Refined, yes, but sometimes I think we lose something when we polish away all the rough edges. The senator's eyes twinkled, and I realized he was needling Patricia deliberately, gently pointing out the artifice of it all. "Tradition evolves," Patricia said coolly. "That's what keeps it relevant." Or, Senator Morrison said mildly, "We evolve and call it tradition, to make ourselves feel better about leaving things behind." An uncomfortable silence fell over that section of the table. Patricia's smile never wavered, but I saw the flash of anger in her eyes. The senator had touched a nerve, had suggested that Patricia's carefully constructed world was less about honoring the past and more about creating a present that suited her particular vision. James jumped in smoothly, redirecting the conversation to safer topics, and the moment passed. But I filed it away, that small rebellion from an old man who'd known the Harringtons long enough to see through the performance. As the dessert plates were cleared, Patricia stood again. "Now, I believe it's time for our favorite part of the evening. The gift exchange." A murmur of excitement rippled through the table. People pushed back their chairs, moving toward the great room where the presents waited under that enormous tree. I stood with everyone else, my hand instinctively moving to my jacket pocket where the manila folder rested. "Not yet," I told myself. "Wait, see what happens." The great room had been rearranged while we ate. Chairs formed a loose circle around the tree, and the gift table had been moved to the center, easily accessible. Patricia positioned herself near the tree like a conductor preparing for a performance. As you all know, our family has a tradition. Each year, we draw names and exchange gifts, thoughtful presents that show how well we know and care for each other. Patricia's smile swept the room. It's a way of strengthening our bonds, of showing appreciation for the people who matter most in our lives. Sarah caught my eye from across the room. I saw the apology there, the guilt, the wish that things could be different. I smiled at her, trying to convey that it was okay, that I understood, that I wasn't angry. But I was tired. God, I was so tired of understanding, of being patient, of making excuses for people who wouldn't make a single excuse for me. "Let's begin," Patricia said brightly. "James, why don't you go first?" James stepped forward and selected a large box wrapped in gold paper. "This is for you, Mom." Patricia opened it with practiced elegance, no tearing, just careful unwrapping that preserved the expensive paper. Inside was a framed photograph, and when she turned it around, I saw it was a professional portrait of the Harrington siblings, James, Sarah, and Olivia, all dressed in complementary colors, all smiling, all looking like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren advertisement. "Oh, James," Patricia breathed, pressing the frame to her chest. "It's perfect, absolutely perfect." She held it up for everyone to see, and the room responded with appropriate admiration. I stared at that photograph, at Sarah's face, at the way she stood between her brother and sister, at the composition that so carefully included the three of them and no one else. No spouses, no partners, just the Harrington children, preserved in amber, as if their adult lives and choices and relationships existed only in the margins of what really mattered, the family name. "My turn," Melissa said, stepping forward. She handed a slim package to Olivia. "I hope you like it." Olivia unwrapped a designer planner, leather-bound and embossed with her initials. "This is gorgeous, Mel. Thank you." "For keeping track of all those MBA assignments," Melissa said with a laugh. The exchange continued. Olivia gave James a set of vintage cufflinks that had belonged to their grandfather. Patricia gave Melissa a spa weekend at some exclusive resort. Each gift was thoughtful, personal, expensive, a demonstration of how well they knew each other, how connected they were, how much they valued these family bonds. And with each exchange, my absence from the ritual became more obvious. I wasn't giving a gift. I wouldn't be receiving one. I was watching a family tradition that I would never be part of, no matter how many Christmases passed, no matter how long Sarah and I stayed married. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. She stepped forward, her hands clasped together nervously. This one is for Olivia. Olivia opened a beautifully wrapped package to reveal a first edition of The Feminine Mystique. Her eyes widened. "Sarah, how did you? I've been looking for this edition for months." "I know," Sarah said, smiling. "You mentioned it last spring, and I called around to every rare bookstore I could find until I tracked one down." Olivia hugged her sister tightly, and I felt something warm bloom in my chest, despite everything else. That was Sarah. She listened. She remembered. She cared about the details that mattered to people. It was one of the 1,000 reasons I loved her. "And now," Patricia said, her voice taking on a particular tone that made my stomach clench, "we have one more gift to exchange." She looked directly at Sarah. "Sweetheart, this is for you." Patricia handed Sarah an envelope, cream-colored, elegant, sealed with a gold sticker. Sarah took it slowly, confusion evident on her face. "From all of us," Patricia added, gesturing to James and Olivia, "we wanted to do something special for you this year." Sarah opened the envelope carefully. I watched her face as she read whatever was inside, watched confusion give way to shock, then to something that looked like distress. "Mom, I can't." "Of course you can," Patricia said smoothly. "You've been working so hard at that nonprofit, doing such meaningful work, but we know the salary isn't what it should be. So we talked to the board, some of them are friends, and we've arranged for you to take a sabbatical. 6 months, fully paid. A chance to travel, to rest, to reconnect with yourself." My blood went cold. "We've booked you a villa in Tuscany for 2 months," James added, smiling like he'd just delivered the best news in the world. "Then maybe Prague, or Vienna, or wherever you want to go. Your choice." "It's all arranged," Olivia said, though I noticed she looked less enthusiastic than her brother and mother. "Flights, accommodations, everything." Sarah stood frozen, the papers in her hand, her face pale. "But Mark and I, we can't just leave for 6 months. He has school, I have work." "Oh, honey." Patricia's voice was silk over steel. "Mark can't come. This is for you. Family only. A chance for you to remember who you are, without all the distractions." The room went silent. Distractions. She'd said it so casually, so easily, as if I weren't standing right there, as if I weren't a person with feelings and dignity, as if 7 years of marriage could be dismissed with a single word. Distractions. I looked at Sarah and saw tears streaming down her face. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "No, I'm not going without Mark. We're married. We're partners. You can't just—" "Sarah, be reasonable," James said, his tone patronizing. "This is an incredible opportunity. A chance to what? To what?" Sarah's voice rose, anger finally breaking through. "To separate me from my husband? Is that what this is? Another one of your plans to make Mark feel like he doesn't belong?" Patricia's expression hardened. "That's not fair. We've always welcomed Mark." "You've never welcomed him," Sarah's voice cracked. "You seat him at the end of the table. You crop him out of family photos. You didn't even include him in the gift exchange. Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't see what you're doing?" The room was frozen. The guests looked uncomfortable, embarrassed to be witnessing this family drama. But I couldn't look away from Sarah, from my wife, finally saying the things I'd been swallowing for 7 years. "Sweetheart, you're being dramatic," Patricia said, her voice cooling. "We simply thought you'd enjoy a vacation. If you want to decline, that's your choice." "Oh, You didn't get one? The voice came from behind me. I turned to find Richard standing there, Patricia's business partner, looking confused. I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude, but didn't everyone draw names for the gift exchange? I thought spouses were included? Patricia's expression flickered just for a second, just enough to show the calculation behind her careful mask. And in that moment, I made my decision. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila folder. The manila folder felt alive in my hands, pulsing with 7 years of accumulated pain, documentation, proof. The room was still frozen in the aftermath of Sarah's outburst, everyone suspended in that uncomfortable space between pretending not to notice and being unable to look away. Patricia's eyes locked onto the folder, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not quite fear, but recognition. She knew. Somehow, she knew that whatever I was holding, it was dangerous to her carefully constructed narrative. "Mark," she said, her voice taking on a warning tone, "this isn't the time or place." "Actually," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded, "I think this is exactly the time and place." I looked at Sarah, whose face was streaked with tears, whose whole body was trembling with the force of finally speaking truth. "Sarah, you asked if I got a gift in the exchange." "Mark, don't," Patricia said sharply. "Whatever you think you're doing, I'm answering a question." I turned to address the room, to address all these people who'd spent the evening pretending I belonged when everyone knew I didn't. Richard asked if spouses were included in the gift exchange. It's a fair question, and the answer is yes, some spouses were included. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is an email from Patricia, sent November 15th. The subject line is Annual Harrington Christmas Gift Exchange. It includes a list of participants and their assigned recipients. I looked up, meeting Patricia's furious gaze. James is assigned to give a gift to Patricia. Olivia is assigned to give a gift to Melissa. Patricia is assigned to give a gift to Sarah. And Melissa. I paused, letting the weight of it settle. Melissa is assigned to give a gift to James. "I don't see what this has to do with," James started. "Notice anything?" I continued, my voice still eerily calm. "Every person on this list is giving a gift to another person on the list. It's a closed circle." James and Melissa are both included as separate participants. They're both part of the family gift exchange. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. She understood before I even said it. "But I'm not on the list," I said simply. "I wasn't assigned to give a gift. I wasn't assigned to receive one, because according to Patricia's email distribution, I wasn't invited to participate in the family gift exchange at all." Senator Morrison shifted in his chair, his expression growing stern. Thomas put his hand on Richard's arm, both of them watching with careful attention. The other guests looked uncomfortable, but no one moved to leave. That's just an oversight," Patricia said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "I must have accidentally." "Is it?" I pulled out another document. This is the email distribution list from last year's Christmas gift exchange. Same pattern. James, Olivia, Melissa, Sarah, Patricia. No, Mark. I pulled out another page. The year before that. Same thing. Another page. And the year before that. And before that. All the way back to our second Christmas as a married couple. My voice was still calm, but my hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. 5 years of documentation showing that spouses are included in family gift exchanges, just not this particular spouse. "You're being ridiculous," James said, his face flushing red. "You're making something out of nothing." "Am I?" I looked at him directly. "Let me ask you something, James. When did Melissa join the gift exchange?" He blinked, caught off guard. "I what?" "When did Melissa start being included in family gift exchanges?" "You got married 6 months before Sarah and I did. So when did she become part of the tradition?" Melissa's face had gone pale. She looked at James, then at Patricia, then at me. It was the first Christmas after we got married," she said quietly. "Patricia invited me to participate right away." "Right away," I repeated. "The first Christmas." Because that's what you do when someone marries into the family. You include them. You make them feel welcome. You treat them like they belong. I turned back to Patricia. So why didn't I get that same welcome? Why have I been excluded from this tradition for 5 consecutive years? Patricia's composure was cracking. This is absurd. You're disrupting Christmas over a gift exchange? You're that petty? It's not about the gifts, I said, and now my voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. It's never been about the gifts. It's about what they represent. It's about being told, year after year, in 1,000 small ways, that I don't belong, that I'm not really family, that I'm tolerated but not accepted. I pulled out more documents, my hands moving faster now. Here's the distribution list for family emails about Sarah's father's estate. Notice how every email about trust distributions, about legal decisions, about financial planning, they all go to James, to Olivia, to their spouses, but never to me. Sarah made a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Here's the group chat about family decisions. Should we sell the old house? Should we establish a family foundation? Should we update the trust documents? Everyone's included. Melissa gets to weigh in. But somehow, these messages never make it to my phone. That's because they're family matters, Patricia snapped, her careful veneer finally shattering. Financial decisions that involve the Harrington estate. Sarah is my wife. The words exploded out of me, 7 years of suppressed rage finally finding voice. We've been married for 7 years. We filed joint taxes. We share everything. You can't claim something is a family matter and then exclude me from it while including James's wife and calling it family. It's different, James said, stepping forward. Melissa and I, we have prenuptial agreements, asset protection. And Sarah and I don't? I laughed, but it sounded harsh even to my own ears. Did you ever ask? Did you ever have a conversation with us about finances, about how we manage our marriage, about what protections might be appropriate? Or did you just assume that because I'm a teacher, because I don't come from money, I must be some kind of gold digger? That's not, Patricia started. That's exactly what you assumed. My voice was shaking now. And you've spent 7 years trying to protect Sarah from me, trying to keep the family money away from me, trying to maintain this fiction that Sarah is still primarily a Harrington and only secondarily my wife. I pulled out another document, this one the most damning of all. This is from your father's trust document. It's public record. I got it from the probate court. It specifies that annual distributions should go to my children and their spouses, not just to the children and their spouses. Those are the exact words he used. Sarah's face crumpled. Dad wanted you included. Your father, I said, looking at Patricia, wanted to take care of all of his children's families. Not just the ones you approved of, all of them. I held up another document. But here's the distribution record. James receives his payment, jointly with Melissa. It goes into an account in both their names. But Sarah's payment? It goes only to her, to an account in her name alone. That's Sarah's choice, Patricia began. No. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a whip. No, it's not my choice. You told me it had to be that way. You said the trust required it. You said Dad's lawyer insisted on it. Patricia's face went rigid. For the first time all evening, she had no smooth response, no practiced explanation. You lied to me, Sarah whispered, staring at her mother. You lied about what Dad wanted. You've been lying this whole time. I was protecting you, Patricia said. Her voice cold now, all pretense of maternal warmth gone. Protecting the family assets, protecting your inheritance. From what? Sarah's voice broke. From my husband? From the man I love? From the person I chose to spend my life with? From making a mistake you'd regret? Patricia's composure finally shattered completely. Sarah, you married a high school teacher? A man with student loans and no prospects. And no family connections. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, Mark, but it's the truth. You're not. You're not what we envisioned for our daughter. The room went silent. Even the string quartet, which had been playing softly in the background all evening, had stopped at some point. And now there was nothing but the sound of breathing, of snow falling outside the windows, of a family fracturing in real time. "What you envisioned," Sarah repeated slowly. "Not what I wanted, not what made me happy. What you envisioned." "You were so young," Patricia said, and now there was desperation in her voice. 23 years old, fresh out of college. You met him at some volunteer program. "I met him at a literacy initiative I helped organize," Sarah said. "He was teaching summer school and volunteered his time to help underprivileged kids learn to read. I watched him spend hours with a 9-year-old boy who was struggling, never losing patience, never giving up. I watched him believe in that kid when everyone else had written him off. And I fell in love with him because he was kind and patient and good, and those are things that matter more than stock portfolios or country club memberships." "That's very romantic," James said, his voice dripping with condescension. "But romance doesn't pay mortgages. It doesn't secure your future." "It doesn't. I don't need you to secure my future." Sarah turned on her brother, her face flushed with anger. "I have a job. I have my own money. Mark and I have built a life together, and we're happy. Or we would be if you'd all stop treating him like he's some kind of interloper." "Sarah, calm down," Melissa said, reaching for her. "Everyone's just concerned about you." "Don't touch me." Sarah stepped back, away from all of them. "Don't you dare tell me to calm down. You're all acting like you care about me, like you're protecting me, but you're not. You're protecting your idea of who I should be. You're protecting this fantasy where I'm still a Harrington first and Sarah second." She crossed the room to stand beside me, taking my hand in hers. Her palm was sweaty, shaking, but her grip was firm. "I'm Sarah Chen. That's who I am. I took Mark's name when we got married, because I wanted to. Because I chose him. Because I chose us." I stared at her, my chest tight. She'd told her family she was keeping her maiden name professionally, but that she'd taken my name legally. I'd never known until this moment how much that choice had meant to her, how much it had cost her in arguments with her mother. "And if you can't accept that," Sarah continued, her voice steady now, despite the tears streaming down her face, "if you can't accept him, then you can't have me either. Because we're a package deal. We have been for 7 years, and we will be for the rest of our lives." Patricia's face had gone white. "Sarah, you don't mean that." "I absolutely mean it." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Mark has been patient with you. He's been kind and gracious and understanding even when you've been cruel. He's never said a word against you, never tried to turn me against my family, never made me choose. But I'm choosing anyway. I'm choosing him." "Over your own family?" Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. "You made it a choice." Sarah's voice broke. "Every time you excluded him, every time you made him feel less than, every time you acted like he was temporary or unimportant or not really family, you were making me choose, and I kept hoping you'd stop. I kept believing that eventually you'd see what I see when I look at him, but you won't, you can't, because you've decided who he is, and no amount of time or evidence or love is going to change your mind." She turned to look at me, and I saw everything in her eyes: apology, love, determination, grief. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have done this years ago. I should have stood up for you, for us. I should have made them see." "It's not your fault," I said, my own voice thick with emotion. "You can't make people see what they refuse to look at." "But I could have stopped participating in their delusions." She looked back at her family. "I could have stopped making excuses for you, stopped trying to smooth things over, stopped pretending that we were one big happy family, when the truth is, you've been waging a quiet war against my marriage for 7 years." Olivia stepped forward, her face stricken. "Sarah, I didn't realize." "Didn't you?" Sarah's voice was gentler with her younger sister, but still firm. "You're smart, Liv. You see patterns. You analyze data. You couldn't possibly have missed what was happening." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I thought Mark understood. I thought he knew it was just Mom being Mom, and that it didn't really mean anything." It meant everything, I said quietly. Every exclusion, every slight, every time I was treated as less than, it meant that I wasn't really welcome, that I was tolerated at best. That 7 years of marriage wasn't enough to make me family in your eyes. Senator Morrison stood up, his expression grave. Patricia, I've known you since Sarah was in high school. I watched you and William raise 3 remarkable children. And William would be ashamed of what's happened here tonight. Patricia flinched, as if she'd been slapped. William believed in character over pedigree, the senator continued. He believed in judging people by their actions, not their bank accounts. And from what I've seen tonight, Mark has shown more character and grace than everyone else in this room combined. He looked at me, then at Sarah. You two have something rare, something worth protecting. Don't let small-minded prejudice poison it. He turned back to Patricia. And you've let your fear of losing control turn you into someone William wouldn't recognize. Someone who would rather see her daughter isolated than married to a good man who doesn't meet your arbitrary standards. How dare you, Patricia started, but the senator held up his hand. I dare, because someone needs to tell you the truth. You're losing your daughter, Patricia. Not to Mark, to your own pride, your own need to control, your own inability to accept that Sarah's life might look different than the one you planned for her. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, could hear the soft sounds of Eleanor Morrison crying quietly in her chair. Patricia stood frozen, her perfect composure shattered, her carefully planned Christmas in ruins around her. James looked angry but uncertain, as if he wasn't sure anymore which side he was supposed to be on. Melissa just looked sad, and Olivia was crying openly now, her mascara running, her perfect appearance as destroyed as everything else in the room. Sarah's hand in mine was the only solid thing in a world that had tilted on its axis. I looked at her, my wife, my partner, my choice, and saw my entire future in her eyes. We should go, she said quietly. I nodded. We started toward the door, but Patricia's voice stopped us. If you leave now, she said, her voice shaking. If you walk out that door. Sarah turned back, and I'd never seen her look more like her father. Stern, principled, unshakable. Then what, Mom? You'll cut me off? Disinherit me? Stop speaking to me? She laughed, but it was bitter. You've already been doing all of that in subtle ways for years. At least this way, it'll be honest. Sarah, please. I love you, Sarah said, and her voice broke on the words. I'll always love you. You're my mother. But I can't keep sacrificing my marriage, my husband, my happiness to maintain a fiction that makes you comfortable. I can't keep watching Mark hurt and pretending I don't see it. I can't keep being complicit in your cruelty. She squeezed my hand. We're leaving now, and we're not coming back until you're ready to treat Mark with the respect and dignity he deserves, until you're ready to see him as family, real family, not a guest, not an outsider, not a phase I'm going through, family. And if I can't, Patricia whispered. Sarah's face crumpled, but her voice stayed steady. Then I guess you've made your choice, and I've made mine. We walked out of that mansion into the snowy Christmas night, leaving behind the perfect decorations, the expensive food, the carefully wrapped presents, the string quartet playing to an audience that had finally stopped pretending. We walked out together, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt like I could breathe. We drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. Sarah stared out the passenger window at the snow-covered streets, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs she was trying to suppress. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white, my mind replaying the scene over and over like a film loop I couldn't stop. You're not what we envisioned for our daughter. Patricia's words echoed in my head, and even though had always known how she felt, hearing it, said out loud, with such cold finality, felt like being punched in the chest by someone you'd been watching wind up for years. Pull over, Sarah said suddenly, her voice thick with tears. What? Pull over, please. I can't. I guided the car into a grocery store parking lot, mostly empty on Christmas evening. The moment I put the car in park, Sarah turned to me and broke completely. 7 years of holding it together, of being the bridge between two worlds, of trying to love both her family and her husband without having to choose it all, came pouring out in great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. I unbuckled both our seatbelts and pulled her across the center console, awkward in the confined space, but necessary. She buried her face in my shoulder and cried like I'd never heard her cry before. Not when her father died. Not at any of the hard moments we'd weathered together. This was different. This was grief for something that had been dying slowly for years and had finally, irrevocably ended. "I'm so sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen. I should have done something." "Shh," I murmured, stroking her hair, holding her as tightly as I could. "This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." But I knew. God, Mark, I knew they were treating you badly. I knew, and I kept making excuses, kept telling myself it would get better, kept asking you to be patient. "I chose to be patient," I said firmly. "That was my choice. I never wanted you to have to choose between us." "But that's exactly what they were making me do." She pulled back, her face blotchy and streaked with tears, her carefully applied makeup destroyed. "Every time they excluded you, every time they made you feel less, then they were forcing me to choose. And I kept choosing wrong. I kept choosing them, choosing to preserve their feelings, choosing to keep the peace instead of standing up for you. You stood up for me tonight." 7 years too late," her voice cracked. 7 years, Mark. 7 years of watching them hurt you, watching you smile through it, watching you be so much better than they deserved. And I let it happen. I participated in it. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. "Listen to me. You are not responsible for their choices. You are not responsible for their prejudices, or their cruelty, or their inability to see me clearly. The only thing you're responsible for is how you choose to move forward from here." "I meant what I said in there," she whispered, "about choosing you, about not going back until they can treat you with respect. I meant every word." "I know you did." I kissed her forehead. "And I love you for it. But Sarah, they're your family, your mother, your brother, your sister. I don't want to be the reason you lose them." "You're not the reason." Her voice was fierce now, cutting through the tears. "They're the reason. They made this choice when they decided that their pride and their prejudices were more important than my happiness. When they decided that controlling who I married was more important than accepting who I actually married." She took a shaky breath. "My father used to tell me that you can judge a person's character by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. People they see as beneath them. And tonight I saw exactly who my mother is, who James is, and I don't like what I saw." I thought about Senator Morrison's words, about William being ashamed. I'd only known Sarah's father for 2 years before he died. But in that time, he'd treated me with consistent kindness. He'd asked about my students, had seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts on education and literature. He'd never made me feel less than. "Your father was a good man," I said quietly. "He was, and he would have hated what Mom did tonight, what she's been doing for years." Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "That villa in Tuscany? That 6-month sabbatical? That wasn't a gift. That was a separation strategy. She was trying to physically remove me from you, hoping that time and distance would what? Make me realize I'd made a mistake? Make me see that life without you was somehow better?" I hadn't wanted to say it, but yes, that's exactly what I'd thought the moment Patricia announced the gift. "She's terrified," Sarah continued, her voice growing steadier as anger replaced grief. "She's terrified that I'm happy, that we're happy. Because our happiness proves that everything she believes about worth and status and the right kind of people, it's all bullshit. We're happy in our tiny apartment with our rescue dog and our combined teacher and nonprofit worker salaries. We're happy eating takeout and watching movies and living a life that would horrify her. and that happiness is dangerous to her entire worldview. She laughed, but it was bitter. You know what's funny? I make less money than you do. My nonprofit job, it pays terribly. I could have gone into corporate philanthropy, could have made 6 figures easy with my background and connections. But I wanted to do work that mattered, work that helped people. And Mom always praised that choice, always told people how proud she was that I was making a difference. But she only praised it because she thought it was temporary. I said, understanding. A phase you'd outgrow once you'd proven your altruism and were ready to come back to the family fold. Exactly. And marrying you was supposed to be the same thing. A walk on the wild side. A rebellious moment. Something I'd eventually grow out of once I'd gotten the idealism out of my system. She shook her head. But I didn't grow out of you. I grew into us. And that terrifies her because it means she doesn't control me anymore. We sat in the parking lot for another 10 minutes, holding each other, talking through what had happened, processing the earthquake that had just reshaped our lives. Eventually, Sarah's tears slowed, her breathing evened out, and she pulled away to look at me with red-rimmed eyes that were somehow clearer than I'd seen them in years. Take me home, she said. Our home. Not that mausoleum she calls an estate. Our apartment with the leaky faucet, and the neighbors who fight too loud and Murphy who's probably wondering where the hell we are. I smiled and started the car. The drive back was different from the drive there. This time, Sarah held my hand the entire way, her thumb tracing the same patterns on my palm that she'd traced that morning, but this time, it wasn't anxiety. It was connection. Solidarity. Choose. Our apartment building looked humble compared to where we'd just been, a modest 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a parking lot that needed repaving. But when we climbed the stairs to our second-floor unit and heard Murphy barking excitedly on the other side of the door, I felt something in my chest unclench. This was home. This was real. This was ours. Murphy launched himself at us the moment we opened the door, all wriggling excitement and slobbery kisses, completely unconcerned with family drama or social status or whether we'd attended the right schools. We let him out, fed him his dinner, and then collapsed onto our worn couch, the one we'd bought secondhand when we first moved in together, the one that didn't match anything else in the room but was perfect for curling up on. Sarah leaned against me, and I wrapped my arms around her, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. We sat in silence for a long time. The only sounds the tick of our kitchen clock and Murphy's contented snoring from his bed in the corner. My phone's been buzzing, Sarah said eventually, not moving to check it. Mine too. I don't want to look. Then don't. But curiosity, or maybe obligation, eventually won out. Sarah pulled out her phone, and I watched her face as she scrolled through the messages. Her expression shifted from neutral to angry to sad to something I couldn't quite identify. Olivia's apologizing, she said quietly. A long text. She says she's been blind, that she's ashamed of herself, that she wants to talk when I'm ready. Sarah's voice softened. She means it. I can tell. That's good, I said, and meant it. I'd always liked Olivia. She'd been young when Sarah and I got married, barely 21, and I'd written off some of her complicity as following her mother's lead. Maybe there was hope there. James sent one message. You're being childish. Mom is devastated. Call her. Sarah's jaw tightened. No apology. No acknowledgement of what happened. Just blame. And your mother? Sarah scrolled further, then stopped. Her face went pale. She's written me out of the trust. My stomach dropped. What? Email from the family lawyer. Timestamp 2 hours ago. She's invoking some clause that lets her modify distributions in cases of, Sarah's voice shook as she read, marital circumstances that threaten the integrity of family assets. I felt rage flood through me, hot and immediate. She's punishing you for choosing me. She's proving my point, Sarah said, but her voice was hollow. She's showing exactly who she is, what she values. Money and control over her own daughter's happiness. Sarah. It's fine. But tears were streaming down her face again. It's fine. I didn't want her money anyway. I never asked for distributions from Dad's trust. I told her to put it in savings, or donate it, or do whatever she wanted with it. I don't need it. We don't need it. But I could see that it wasn't the money that hurt. It was what it represented, the final, official severing of family ties. Patricia wasn't just excluding me anymore. She was excluding Sarah too. Cutting off her own daughter because that daughter had dared to stand up for her husband. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting more messages from Harrington family members. Instead, it was from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Senator Morrison. I got your number from Sarah's phone before you left. I want you both to know that what Patricia did tonight was unconscionable. William would have been appalled. If you need anything legal advice, character references, or just someone to talk to who remembers what honor means, please don't hesitate to call. You showed remarkable restraint tonight. Eleanor and I are proud to know you both." I showed the message to Sarah, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of realizing that not everyone in her family's circle was complicit in the cruelty. "He was Dad's best friend," she whispered, "for 40 years. If anyone knew what Dad would have wanted." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We both understood what the senator was offering. Validation, proof that we weren't crazy, that the behavior we'd endured wasn't normal or acceptable, that standing up for ourselves wasn't the wrong choice. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Thomas, Richard's husband. "Richard is furious. We left immediately after you did. He's already told Patricia he's dissolving their business partnership. He won't work with someone who treats family the way she treated you tonight. I'm sorry you had to endure that for so long. You're both welcome at our home anytime." Then, Melissa, "I don't know what to say, except I'm sorry. I should have said something years ago. I should have stood up for you. I was cowardly and complicit, and I'm ashamed. I hope someday you can forgive me." Message after message, from people who'd been at that party, who'd witnessed what happened. Not all of them, some of Patricia's friends sent messages supporting her, talking about family loyalty and respecting elders. But enough. Enough people saw the truth and were willing to name it. "We're not alone," Sarah said, scrolling through her own similar messages. "We thought we were alone, but we're not." "We were never alone," I said, pulling her closer. "We had each other. We've always had each other." She turned to look at me, her face still blotchy and tear-stained, but beautiful in the way that real emotion always makes people beautiful, raw and honest and unfiltered. "What you did tonight with the folder, with the documentation that must have taken months to prepare." 6 months, I admitted. "After I overheard that phone call with your mother about the trust, I started paying closer attention, started keeping records. I went to a lawyer, got copies of public documents. I wasn't sure I'd ever use it. I kept hoping I wouldn't have to." "But you were ready," she said softly. "You were ready to stand up for yourself, for us, even knowing it might destroy everything." "Not everything," I corrected. "It might destroy my relationship with your family, but it couldn't destroy us unless we let it." Sarah kissed me then, soft and long and full of everything we'd been through and everything we'd survived and everything we'd chosen despite the cost. When she pulled back, there was determination in her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said, "we're going to have to figure out what comes next, how to navigate this, whether there's any path forward with my family, or if this is truly the end. We're going to have to deal with the practical stuff, lawyers, trust documents, making sure Mom can't do anything else to hurt us financially." "Tomorrow," I agreed. "But tonight," her voice broke again, "tonight I just want to be here with you, in our home, with our dog, living our life, the life we chose, the life that's ours." We ordered pizza because neither of us had the energy to cook. We changed out of our Christmas finery into sweatpants and t-shirts. We sat on our couch and watched Die Hard, because Sarah insisted it was a Christmas movie and we needed something with explosions to match how we felt inside. Murphy climbed up between us, illegal because he knew he wasn't allowed on the couch, But neither of us had the heart to make him move. We let him stay, this scrappy rescue who'd chosen us just as much as we'd chosen him, and we held each other in the flickering light of the television. Around midnight, Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the screen, then at me. "It's Olivia. Do you want to answer?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I do." She put it on speaker. "Sarah?" Olivia's voice was thick with tears. "I know it's late. I'm sorry. I couldn't wait until morning. I need to tell you." "Liv, it's okay." "No, it's not okay. Nothing about tonight was okay. Nothing about the last 7 years has been okay." Olivia took a shaky breath. "I've been complicit. I've been a coward." I told myself it wasn't my place to say anything, that it was between you and Mom, that maybe Mark didn't mind as much as it seemed. But that was bullshit. I knew he minded. I knew you were hurting. And I said nothing because it was easier. Sarah closed her eyes, fresh tears leaking out. "Liv, I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness," Olivia continued. "I'm calling to tell you that I'm on your side. Completely. Whatever happens with Mom, whatever she does, whatever choices she makes, I'm with you. You and Mark. You're my family. You're more my family than she is right now." "Don't say that," Sarah whispered. "She's still your mother." "And she's wrong." Olivia's voice was fierce. "She's been wrong for years, and someone needed to say it. Mark did. You did. And I should have done it a long time ago." They talked for another 20 minutes, Sarah and her little sister, processing, crying, rebuilding something that had been damaged by years of silence. When Sarah finally hung up, she looked at me with something like hope in her eyes. "Maybe it's not all lost," she said. "Maybe not," I agreed. We went to bed eventually, exhausted physically and emotionally, drained by the intensity of the evening. But as I lay in the darkness with Sarah curled against me, her breathing gradually evening out into sleep, I felt something I hadn't felt in 7 years of Harrington family gatherings. I felt peace. Not because the war was over, it was just beginning, really. Patricia wouldn't forgive easily. There would be consequences, complications, painful conversations still to come. But I'd finally stopped hiding, finally stopped pretending the wounds didn't hurt, finally stood up and said, "I exist, I matter, I deserve respect." And Sarah had stood beside me. That was worth everything. I woke to sunlight streaming through our bedroom window and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, disoriented by sleep, I thought yesterday had been a dream, a vivid, anxiety-fueled nightmare conjured by too many years of swallowing hurt. But then I saw Sarah's emerald dress draped over the chair in the corner, wrinkled and abandoned, and reality came flooding back. It had happened. All of it had happened. I found Sarah in the kitchen, already dressed in jeans and one of my old college sweatshirts that was 3 sizes too big on her. She was staring at her laptop, a coffee mug clutched in both hands, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Murphy sat at her feet, his head on her knee, offering the kind of wordless comfort only dogs can provide. "Morning," I said, and she jumped slightly, as if she'd been so deep in thought she hadn't heard me approach. "Hey," she managed a small smile, but her eyes were red-rimmed and shadowed with exhaustion. "I made coffee. Yours is on the counter." I poured myself a cup and sat down beside her. "How long have you been up?" "Since 5. She gestured at the laptop. "I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything. So I figured I might as well be productive." "What are you looking at?" She turned the screen toward me. It was open to a legal document. Dense text, formal language, the kind of thing that required a lawyer to translate. Dad's trust. The actual document, not the version Mom's lawyer sent. I requested it from the probate court last night. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Sarah, it's the day after Christmas. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Her voice was firm. "Mom said she was invoking some clause about marital circumstances that threaten family assets. I wanted to see if that clause actually exists, or if she's just making up legal justification for cutting me off." "Mabel, and?" Sarah's smile turned sharp, almost feral. "It doesn't exist. At least, not the way she claims." There is a clause about distributions being modified in cases where a beneficiary is facing financial hardship or legal jeopardy, things that might put the trust assets at risk. But there's nothing about marriage, nothing about spousal access to funds, nothing that would justify what she did. I stared at the screen, my legal knowledge limited to what I'd picked up from my own research, but understanding enough to see what Sarah was saying. So, she's lying. She's lying, Sarah confirmed. Or her lawyer is lying on her behalf. Either way, what she did yesterday cutting me off, it's not actually supported by the trust document. She's just hoping I won't challenge it, hoping I'll be too hurt, or too intimidated, or too concerned about maintaining family peace to actually fight back. Are you going to fight back? Sarah looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never quite seen before, a hardness, a determination that went beyond just defending our marriage. This was about principle now, about refusing to be bullied, about claiming what was rightfully hers, not because she needed the money, but because her father had wanted her to have it and her mother had no right to take it away. I'm going to fight back, she said quietly. Not for the money. I meant what I said last night. We don't need it. But I'm not going to let her rewrite Dad's wishes to punish me for making choices she doesn't approve of. I'm not going to let her use money as a weapon to control my life. I covered her hand with mine. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. You know that, right? I know. She squeezed my fingers. But Mark, this is going to get ugly. Really ugly. If I challenge this, if I take Mom to court over the trust, it's going to be public. People will know, her business associates, her friends, everyone in her social circle. It's going to embarrass her in ways she'll never forgive. And you're worried about that? I'm worried about you, she corrected. About how this will affect you. About whether standing up to her is worth the fallout that's coming. I thought about that question, really thought about it. A year ago, even 6 months ago, I might have said no, might have counseled patience, diplomacy, finding a way to smooth things over. But something had shifted in me. Maybe it had been shifting for years, slowly, imperceptibly, until yesterday, when the dam finally broke. She wrote you out of your father's trust for marrying me, I said slowly. She spent 7 years systematically excluding me from family events, family decisions, family photographs. She tried to send you to Europe for 6 months to separate us. She stood in her living room yesterday and told me to my face that I'm not what she envisioned for you, as if her vision matters more than your choice, your happiness, your life. I paused, making sure Sarah was hearing me, really hearing me. If we let that stand, if we accept her rewriting your father's trust, if we walk away without challenging it, we're telling her that she was right. That money and social status and her approval matter more than dignity and truth and standing up for what's right. And I can't do that anymore. I won't do that anymore. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Dad would have liked that answer. Your dad was a judge, I said. He believed in the law, in justice, in truth mattering. I think he'd want you to fight for what he intended, not let it be twisted to serve your mother's agenda. He would. Sarah wiped her eyes. Okay, I'm going to call a lawyer after the holidays. Challenge the modification. Force Mom to justify what she did in front of a judge if necessary. Good. We sat in silence for a moment, drinking our coffee, Murphy's gentle snoring the only sound. Then Sarah's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, and her expression darkened. James? James. She showed me the screen. The message was short, curt, and dripping with condescension. Mom's lawyer says, if you pursue legal action over the trust, she'll countersue for the full value of all gifts she's given you over the years. College tuition, car payments, wedding expenses. Add it up, Sarah. Is your pride really worth bankrupting yourself? I felt rage surge through me, hot and immediate. He's threatening you. He's bluffing, Sarah said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Gifts aren't loans. You can't just retroactively demand repayment because someone makes choices you don't like. But he's trying to scare you, trying to make you back down. Yeah, Sarah's jaw set in that stubborn way I loved. It's not going to work. She typed back a response, her fingers flying across the screen. Tell Mom's lawyer that gifts are legally irrevocable. Tell Mom that threatening to sue her own daughter for getting a college education and having a wedding is exactly the kind of thing that will make a judge question her fitness to manage a family trust. And tell yourself that being Mom's enforcer doesn't make you look strong, it makes you look like a bully. She hit send, then turned off her phone entirely. I don't want to see any more messages today. From any of them. I need a break from all this. What do you want to do? She leaned against me, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. I want to pretend yesterday didn't happen, just for a few hours. I want to have the Christmas we would have had if we'd never gone to that party. We can do that, I said. We still have presents to exchange. And I'm pretty sure there's leftover pizza in the fridge that counts as breakfast food if we're creative about it. Sarah laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Cold pizza for Christmas breakfast. Mom would have a heart attack. Good thing she's not invited. We spent the morning doing exactly what Sarah wanted, pretending the world outside our apartment didn't exist. We exchanged our gifts to each other, small and thoughtful things we'd picked out weeks ago. I gave Sarah a first edition of Mary Oliver poems I'd found at an estate sale, knowing how much she loved Oliver's work. She gave me a leather messenger bag to replace the falling-apart backpack I'd been using to carry papers to and from school. Now you'll look like a proper professor, she teased, though her eyes were soft with affection. I'm not a professor. I'm a high school teacher. Professor, teacher, same difference. You're educating young minds. You deserve a bag that doesn't have duct tape holding it together. We took Murphy for a long walk through our neighborhood, watching kids try out new bikes and sleds, seeing families bundled up together, all the normal, mundane beauty of a holiday that had nothing to do with catered French cuisine, or string quartets, or social performances. This was what Christmas was supposed to be, I thought. Not perfect, not expensive, just people who loved each other, spending time together, choosing joy, despite, or maybe because of, life's complications. Around noon, there was a knock on our door. Sarah and I exchanged glances, both of us tensing. Murphy barked once, sharp and protective. I approached the door cautiously, half expecting Patricia or James to be standing there, ready to continue yesterday's confrontation. Instead, I found Olivia, looking younger than her, 26 years in jeans and a parka, her eyes red from crying, her hands clutching a bakery box. I know you probably don't want visitors, she said quickly, before I could speak. I know you need space, and I'm technically part of the family that hurt you, and I should probably just leave you alone. But I brought cinnamon rolls from that bakery Sarah loves, and I really need to talk to both of you, please. Sarah appeared behind me. For a long moment, the sisters just looked at each other across the threshold. Then Sarah stepped forward and pulled Olivia into a fierce hug. Come in, she said. It's freezing out there. Olivia practically collapsed onto our couch, and Murphy immediately climbed into her lap, sensing distress, and responding the way he always did, with enthusiastic face-licking and the full weight of his body pressed against whoever needed comfort. I left, Olivia said without preamble. I packed a bag this morning and told Mom I was moving out, that I couldn't stay in that house, couldn't be part of a family that treats people the way she treated Mark yesterday. Sarah sat down beside her sister, taking her hand. Liv, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Olivia's voice was fierce. Sarah, I've watched you make excuse after excuse for her behavior. I've watched Mark smile through years of exclusion and disrespect. And I've said nothing. I've done nothing. I've been a coward because it was easier than standing up to Mom. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry. You've been part of this family for 7 years, and I never once defended you. Never once called out Mom's bullshit. Never once made you feel like you belonged. And that's unforgivable. It's not unforgivable, I said quietly, sitting down across from her. You were caught in the middle. I never expected. But you should have expected it, Olivia interrupted. You should have been able to expect basic decency from your wife's family, basic respect, basic acknowledgement that you exist and matter. And instead, we let Mom set the tone. We let her treat you like you were temporary, like you were a mistake Sarah would eventually correct. She wiped her eyes roughly. Last night, after you left, Mom acted like she was the victim, like she'd been attacked, like you and Sarah had ruined Christmas by making a scene. And James agreed with her. He said you were being dramatic, that you'd misinterpreted things, that Mom had always been welcoming, and you were just too sensitive. Of course he did, Sarah said bitterly. But Senator Morrison called him out, Olivia continued. Right there in the living room, in front of everyone who'd stayed. He said that anyone who'd witnessed what happened and couldn't see the pattern of exclusion and disrespect was either lying or deluding themselves. He said Dad would be ashamed of us. And then he and his wife left, and so did Richard and Thomas, and half the other guests. Olivia's voice dropped to a whisper. By midnight, it was just Mom, James, Melissa, and me, sitting in that huge house with all those perfect decorations, and Mom was crying, saying she'd only ever tried to protect Sarah. Protect the family legacy. Protect what Dad built. Protect herself, Sarah said flatly. That's what she was really protecting. Her sense of control. Her need to be right about everything. I know, Olivia nodded. I see that now. I should have seen it years ago, but I didn't want to. It was easier to believe Mom was just concerned, just careful, just protective. Easier than admitting she was being cruel. She looked at both of us. This morning, I told her I was leaving, that I couldn't live with someone who had cut off her own daughter for standing up for her husband. And Olivia's voice broke. She told me I was choosing sides, that if I left, if I supported you, I'd be choosing you over the family. What did you say? Sarah asked softly. I told her the family includes you and Mark, that it has for 7 years. And if she can't accept that, then maybe she's the one choosing sides, not me. Olivia pulled a tissue from her pocket, blowing her nose inelegantly. So I'm homeless for the moment. I was going to get a hotel, but I thought maybe I could crash here for a few days, just until I find an apartment. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll stay out of your way. Stop, Sarah said firmly. Of course you can stay here, for as long as you need. Really? Olivia looked between us, hope and uncertainty warring on her face. Even after everything, even though I was complicit in how Mom treated you? You're here now, I said. That's what matters. You saw what was wrong, and you're taking a stand. That takes courage, real courage. Olivia started crying again, and Sarah pulled her close. And suddenly, I was looking at these two sisters who'd been raised in wealth and privilege and careful social performance, now sitting on my second-hand couch in a modest apartment, choosing truth over comfort, choosing integrity over inheritance. We'll figure it out, Sarah murmured, stroking her sister's hair. All of us, together. And in that moment, I realized something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about my relationship with Sarah anymore. It wasn't just about whether the Harringtons accepted me. It was bigger than that. It was about what kind of family we were choosing to build. Not the family we were born into, but the family we created through choice and courage and standing up for what was right. Murphy, sensing the emotional intensity, wiggled his way between the sisters and sneezed dramatically, which made all three of us laugh despite the tears. It was a small moment, silly and mundane, but it felt important somehow. It felt like the beginning of something new. Sarah's phone, which she'd turned back on to call Olivia back, buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, and her expression hardened. It's Mom's lawyer. Don't answer, Olivia said quickly. Not yet. Not until you've got your own lawyer. Anything you say could be used against you. Sarah hesitated, then declined the call. You're right. I'll call a lawyer tomorrow. Get proper representation before I respond to any of this. The phone immediately buzzed again, a text this time. Sarah looked at it, and her face went pale. "What?" I asked. "Mom's threatening to contest Dad's will. She says if I pursue the trust issue, she'll claim that Dad wasn't of sound mind when he made his estate decisions. That he was influenced by medication, by his illness, by Sarah's voice shook with rage, by me manipulating him." The room went silent. Even Murphy seemed to sense the gravity of what had just been said. "She wouldn't," Olivia whispered. "She wouldn't dishonor Dad's memory like that. She couldn't." But we all knew she could. She would. When Patricia Harrington felt threatened, when she felt control slipping away, she would use any weapon at her disposal. Even if that weapon was destroying her dead husband's reputation. Sarah stood up, her whole body trembling with fury. "Call the lawyer back, now. Tell him we'll see them in court. Tell him that if Mom wants to claim Dad wasn't of sound mind, she can do it in front of a judge who can examine all the evidence, including the fact that she's been systematically violating his wishes for 3 years. "Sarah," I started. "No." She turned to me, and I saw tears of rage streaming down her face. "She's crossed a line. Attacking you, attacking our marriage, that's one thing. But attacking Dad's memory, suggesting he didn't know what he was doing when he made his estate plans, that's unforgivable." She grabbed her phone and started typing, her fingers shaking, but determined. "I'm done being diplomatic. I'm done protecting her feelings. I'm done pretending that her behavior is anything other than what it is: cruel, controlling, and completely unacceptable." She hit send, and we all knew that there was no going back now. The war had been declared, the battle lines had been drawn, and whatever happened next would reshape the Harrington family forever. But looking at Sarah, at her fierce determination and righteous anger, at Olivia sitting on our couch having chosen truth over comfort, I felt something unexpected. I felt hope. Not for reconciliation, that might never come, but for something better, for a family built on choice rather than obligation, for relationships based on mutual respect rather than social performance, for a future where love mattered more than money, where character mattered more than status, where standing up for what was right mattered more than keeping the peace. "We're going to get through this," I said, pulling both sisters close. "All of us. Together." And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I actually believed it. The lawyer Sarah hired was named Rebecca Chen, no relation, though Sarah joked that it was a good omen. She was in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a reputation for handling high-stakes family law cases with a combination of strategic brilliance and ruthless efficiency. We met in her downtown office 3 days after Christmas. Olivia came with us, both as moral support and as a potential witness to years of family dynamics. The office was modern and minimalist, all glass and steel, with a view of the city that probably cost as much in rent as our entire apartment. Rebecca listened without interrupting as Sarah walked through the entire history: the systematic exclusion, the gift exchanges, the trust distributions, Patricia's threat to contest William's will. I added details where relevant, particularly about the documentation I'd compiled. Olivia provided context about family dynamics, about Patricia's increasing need for control after William's death, about conversations she'd overheard but never questioned. When we finished, Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her fingers steepled in front of her face. Then she leaned forward, her expression serious, but not without sympathy. "I'm going to be very direct with you," she said. "What your mother is doing, both the trust manipulation and the threat to contest your father's will, is legally questionable at best and potentially fraudulent at worst. But here's what you need to understand. She has resources, significant resources. She can afford to drag this out for years, to file motion after motion, to make this process as expensive and emotionally exhausting as possible." "I don't care about the cost," Sarah said immediately. "You should care," Rebecca said firmly, "because this isn't just about money. This is about your emotional well-being, your marriage, your future. I've seen families destroy themselves in litigation like this. I've seen people win the legal battle and lose everything that actually mattered." She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "That said, if you want to fight this, I think you have an excellent case." The trust document is clear. Your father's intentions were explicit. And your mother's attempt to modify distributions without legal justification is exactly the kind of thing judges don't look kindly upon. What about her threat to contest the will? I asked. Rebecca's expression hardened. That's where things get ugly. Contesting a will 3 years after probate, claiming the deceased wasn't of sound mind, that's a nuclear option. It's expensive, difficult to prove, and if she loses, it could open her up to countersuits for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But she could do it, Sarah said quietly. She could drag Dad's name through the mud, make people question his judgment, his competency. She could try, Rebecca interrupted, but she'd have to overcome significant hurdles. Your father was a federal judge. He had medical records, testimony from doctors and colleagues, years of documentation showing he was sharp and competent until the very end. The burden of proof would be on her to show otherwise, and from what you've told me, that proof doesn't exist. So it's a bluff, Olivia said. It's leverage, Rebecca corrected. She's trying to scare Sarah into backing down. The question is, are you willing to call that bluff? Sarah looked at me, and I saw the question in her eyes. We'd talked about this every night since Christmas, lying in bed in the darkness, weighing options and consequences. On paper, walking away was the smart choice. We didn't need the trust money. We had our jobs, our savings, our life together. We could just let Patricia have her way and move on. But this wasn't about logic anymore. This was about principle, about refusing to let a bully rewrite history to suit her narrative, about standing up for William's wishes and for the truth itself. Call the bluff, I said. Sarah nodded. Call the bluff. Rebecca smiled, a small, fierce expression that reminded me of a predator sensing weakness in its prey. Good. Then here's what we're going to do. She spent the next hour outlining strategy. First, they'd file a formal challenge to Patricia's modification of the trust distributions, demanding she show legal justification for her actions. Second, they'd request a full accounting of all trust activities since William's death, every distribution, every decision, every communication about trust management. If she's been systematically excluding Mark from distributions, while including James's wife, that establishes a pattern of discrimination that violates the trust terms, Rebecca explained. And if she's been making other questionable decisions about trust management, it gives us grounds to petition for her removal as trustee. Can we actually do that? Sarah asked, her voice a mixture of hope and disbelief. Remove her as trustee? If we can prove she's violated the trust terms, acted in bad faith, or mismanaged the assets, yes, absolutely. The court can appoint an independent trustee to manage the trust going forward. Rebecca looked directly at Sarah. Your father set up this trust to benefit his children and their families. If your mother is using it as a weapon to control your life choices, she's violating her fiduciary duty. The concept settled over me like a revelation. All this time, I'd thought of Patricia's power as absolute, immutable. But it wasn't. She was bound by the terms William had set, by legal obligations she couldn't simply ignore because they inconvenienced her agenda. How long will this take? Olivia asked. Months, possibly years, Rebecca admitted. Family litigation moves slowly. But we can file for emergency motions if necessary, particularly if Patricia tries to follow through on her threat to contest the will. That would require immediate judicial intervention. We left the office with a plan, a timeline, and a retainer agreement that made me wince despite understanding it was necessary. Sarah signed the papers without hesitation, using money from her personal savings money she'd earned from her nonprofit work, untouched by Harrington family funds. This is my choice, she said as we walked to the car. My money, my decision, my fight. Olivia, who'd been mostly quiet during the meeting, spoke up from the back seat. I want to help pay for this. I have savings from my summer internships, and I'm getting a job as soon as I finish my MBA. This isn't just about you, Sarah. It's about all of us standing up to Mom's control. Liv, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Olivia's voice was firm. I've been complicit for too long. Let me help. The drive home was quiet, each of us processing what we just set in motion. There was no going back now. Papers would be filed. Lawyers would send formal communications. The dispute would become official, documented, part of the public record. Patricia would be furious. We found out just how furious when we got back to the apartment. There was a letter taped to our door, not sent through the mail, but hand-delivered, which meant someone had come to our building specifically to leave it. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of Patricia's personal stationery, covered in her precise, controlled handwriting. Sarah, I raised you better than this. I raised you to understand loyalty, family, the importance of maintaining dignity even in disagreement. Instead, you've chosen to align yourself with someone who has filled your head with paranoia and resentment. Your father would be devastated to see what you've become. He trusted me to protect his legacy, to ensure his children were cared for and guided properly. I have done nothing but honor that trust. If you persist in this course, if you hire lawyers and make accusations and drag our family business into the public eye, you will leave me no choice but to protect what your father built by any means necessary, including proving that his judgment was compromised in his final years, and that the trust he established should be reformed to reflect what he would have wanted had he been thinking clearly. This is your last opportunity to step back from the precipice, drop this nonsense, apologize to the family, and we can find a way to move forward. Continue down this path, and you will discover that I can be far more formidable an opponent than you imagine. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Mother. Sarah read the letter twice, then handed it to me without a word. I read it, feeling my jaw clench tighter with each line, then passed it to Olivia. She hand-delivered this, Olivia said, her voice hollow. She drove here, to your apartment, to leave this letter on your door like some kind of mob boss delivering a warning. Photograph it, I said suddenly. Both sides. Clear images. Then, save the original. Sarah looked at me, confused. Why? Because this isn't just a letter, I said, pulling out my phone. This is evidence. She's threatening to lie about your father's mental competency. She's explicitly stating that she'll claim he wasn't thinking clearly when he made his estate decisions. I looked at Olivia for confirmation. That's potential grounds for a defamation claim if she actually does it. Olivia said, understanding dawning, and it shows consciousness of wrongdoing. She wouldn't need to threaten Sarah if she actually had legitimate grounds to contest the will. I photographed the letter from multiple angles, making sure the handwriting was clear, the stationery identifiable, the threat explicit and documented. Then I texted the images to Rebecca with a brief explanation. Her response came within minutes. Perfect. Don't respond to her. Don't engage at all. Let me handle it. This letter just made our case significantly stronger. Sarah collapsed onto the couch, Murphy immediately climbing into her lap. She came here, she said quietly. To our home. She's never been here before. In 7 years of marriage, she's never once visited our apartment. But she came here to deliver a threat. She's scared, Olivia said, sitting beside her sister. That's what this is. She's terrified that she's losing control. So she's escalating, trying to intimidate you into backing down. It's working, Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. I'm terrified, not of losing the trust money. I don't care about that, but of what she's willing to do, of how far she'll go. She's threatening to destroy Dad's reputation, to claim he was mentally incompetent. How can I fight someone who's willing to do that to her own husband's memory? I sat on her other side, sandwiching her between Olivia and me. You fight by telling the truth, by trusting that the evidence will speak for itself. Your father was a federal judge, Sarah. He had colleagues, law clerks, friends who knew him until the end. If Patricia tries to claim he wasn't competent, dozens of people will testify otherwise. Mark's right. Olivia added, Senator Morrison alone would shut down any claim that Dad wasn't sharp. He visited Dad every week until he died. He'd never let Mom dishonor his memory like that. Sarah leaned against me, and I felt the tension in her body, the fear and determination warring inside her. I keep thinking about what she wrote, that Dad would be devastated by what I've become. And part of me wonders if she's right, if he would think I'm being petty or vindictive or— "Stop," I said firmly. "Your father loved you. He respected you. And he respected your choices, including your choice to marry me. I may have only known him for 2 years, but I knew him well enough to understand that. He wasn't like your mother. He didn't measure people by their bank accounts or their pedigrees. He measured them by their character," Olivia said softly. "That's what he always told us. You can tell everything you need to know about someone by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. And Mark," she looked at me with tears in her eyes, "you've spent 7 years being kind to people who treated you terribly. You've been patient and gracious and dignified when you had every right to be angry. That's character. That's what Dad would have seen." Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "I miss him so much. I wish he was here. I wish he could tell me what to do." "I think he did tell you," I said gently, "through his trust, through the explicit language about children and their spouses, through making sure all his children's families would be taken care of. He told you exactly what he wanted. Your mother just doesn't want to hear it." We sat like that for a long time, the 3 of us on our second-hand couch with Murphy snoring contentedly, processing the weight of Patricia's threat and what it meant for the battle ahead. Around dinner time, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something made me answer. Mark Chen. The voice was male, older, cultured, friends of Grace, inframale, onbrings, 1, and 1.or, and absolute, 1 and brings. "Yes, this is Judge Richard Hampton. I served with William Harrington on the federal bench for 20 years. Senator Morrison gave me your number. I hope that's all right." I straightened, suddenly alert. "Of course, sir. What can I do for you?" "Actually, I'm calling to see what I can do for you. I heard about what happened at Christmas. I heard about Patricia's threats. And I want you and Sarah to know that if this goes to court, if Patricia actually tries to claim William wasn't of sound mind when he established his trust, I'll testify on your behalf." My throat tightened. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll fight," Judge Hampton interrupted. "William was one of the finest legal minds I've ever known. He was sharp and thoughtful until the very end. Cancer took his body, but it never touched his intellect. And the trust he established, I reviewed it with him, actually. He asked for my opinion on some of the language. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he specifically wanted to ensure all his children's families were provided for." He paused, and I heard papers rustling. I've taken the liberty of writing down my recollections of our conversations about the trust. Dates, details, William's specific concerns and intentions. I'll be sending a copy to your lawyer. And if Patricia Harrington wants to dishonor her husband's memory by claiming he was incompetent, she'll have to do it in front of me, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man William really was. "Thank you," I managed, my voice rough with emotion. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me. Just take care of Sarah. William loved that girl more than anything. He'd be proud of how you're standing up for her." After we hung up, I told Sarah and Olivia about the call. Sarah started crying again, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief, of validation, of knowing that her father's memory would be protected by people who actually knew him. "It's not just us," she said wonderingly. "It's not just us against Mom. There are people who see the truth, who are willing to stand up for what's right." "More people than you realize," I said. "Senator Morrison, Judge Hampton, Richard and Thomas, Melissa, even she sent another apology yesterday, asking if there was anything she could do to help." "And me," Olivia added. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Sarah looked around our small apartment at the mismatched furniture and the stack of law books on the coffee table and the dog hair on every surface. Then she looked at her sister and her husband, at the family she'd chosen, and the family that had chosen her back. "Okay," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Okay. If Mom wants a war, we'll give her a war. But we'll fight with truth, with evidence, with the law on our side. We'll fight the right way, the way Dad would have wanted." She picked up her phone and texted Rebecca. "We're moving forward. File everything. No more negotiations. If she wants to contest Dad's will, let her try. We're not backing down." Rebecca's response was immediate. "I was hoping you'd say that. Papers will be filed tomorrow morning. Let's show Patricia Harrington what happens when you underestimate people." Olivia ordered Chinese takeout. We ate straight from the containers, sitting on the floor around our coffee table because our small kitchen table wasn't big enough for 3 people and a laptop full of legal documents. We talked strategy, made lists, reviewed timelines. And somewhere in the middle of planning and eating and occasionally laughing at Murphy's attempts to steal egg rolls, I realized something fundamental had changed. We weren't just reacting anymore. We weren't just defending ourselves against Patricia's attacks. We were building something new, a family based not on obligation or inheritance or social performance, but on choice and courage and mutual respect. A family that included whoever was willing to stand up for truth, regardless of whose name they were born with. It wasn't the family Sarah had been raised in, but it was the family we were creating together, and that family was worth fighting for. The court papers were filed on December 30th, 3 business days before the new year. Rebecca had been thorough 47 pages of legal documentation outlining Sarah's challenge to Patricia's trust modification, requesting full accounting of all trust activities, and petitioning for judicial review of Patricia's actions as trustee. The response came faster than any of us expected. On January 2nd, the first day back to work after the holiday break, I was in the middle of teaching The Great Gatsby to my junior class when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I had a strict no phones policy during class and refused to be a hypocrite about it. But it buzzed again, and then my classroom phone rang, which almost never happened during class hours. "Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to interrupt," the front office secretary said when I answered. "But your wife is online too. She says it's urgent." My students, sensing drama, went immediately quiet. I excused myself, stepping into the hallway to take the call on my cell. "Sarah? What's wrong?" "Rebecca just called." Sarah's voice was shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was from anger or excitement or fear. Mom's lawyer responded to our filing. "And Mark, they made a mistake. A huge mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "They included documents they weren't supposed to include. Tax records, trust accounting statements, emails between Mom and her lawyer. All of it." Rebecca thinks they meant to file a motion to seal certain records, but instead they accidentally attached the records themselves to their response. I leaned against the hallway wall, my mind racing. How is that even possible? Rebecca says it happens more often than you'd think. Someone at the law firm probably pulled together all the documents to review them, then accidentally included the entire folder when they filed the response instead of just the motion. It's Mark. It's bad. Really bad. For Mom, I mean. Good for us. But what did they find? "Can you come home? I'm here with Rebecca and Olivia. We need to talk about this in person. All of us together." I looked back at my classroom full of teenagers, at the half-finished discussion of Gatsby's Green Light and the American Dream. I have 2 more classes today. I called Principal Morrison. She's arranging for a substitute. She says family emergencies take priority. Sarah's voice softened. "Please, Mark, I need you here." Principal Morrison, no relation to the senator, but equally principled, was waiting outside my classroom when I returned. "Go," she said simply. "I'll take over. Family comes first." The drive home felt surreal, my mind churning through possibilities. What could be in those documents that Sarah thought was really bad? What had Patricia been hiding? I found Sarah, Olivia, and Rebecca sitting around our kitchen table, which was covered in printed documents. Rebecca had her laptop open, multiple tabs visible on the screen. Both Sarah and Olivia looked shell-shocked. "Show me," I said, sitting down beside Sarah. Rebecca turned her laptop toward me. "This is an email from Patricia to her lawyer. dated 8 months ago. Read it. I read, David. Regarding our discussion about the trust distributions, I understand your concerns about the legal technicalities, but I maintain that we need to protect family assets from inappropriate access. Mark Chen has shown no interest in contributing to the family business or maintaining appropriate social connections. His influence on Sarah is concerning. I want you to research options for limiting spousal access to trust distributions. Can we require Sarah to maintain separate accounts? Can we structure distributions as loans that must be repaid if the marriage ends? Can we establish conditions for distribution that effectively exclude him? I'm aware this may not align perfectly with William's stated intentions, but I'm confident he would have wanted protections in place had he known how things would develop. He trusted me to manage the trust wisely, and I intend to do exactly that. Please prepare options for my review. Patricia. I read it twice, feeling cold anger settle in my chest. She's admitting right here in writing that she's trying to violate the trust terms. Keep reading, Rebecca said, pulling up another document. This is her lawyer's response. Patricia, I must advise you in the strongest possible terms that what you're proposing would violate the explicit terms of the trust. William's language about children and their spouses is unambiguous. Creating artificial barriers to exclude a specific spouse would be a breach of your fiduciary duty as trustee. Furthermore, if Sarah or Mark were to discover this manipulation, they would have grounds to petition for your removal as trustee and potentially sue for damages. The risk is simply too high. I understand your concerns, but I cannot in good conscience help you violate the trust terms. If you wish to pursue this course, you'll need to find different legal counsel. David Morrison. Wait, I said, looking up. Her lawyer told her no. He explicitly told her this would be illegal and he wouldn't help her do it. Right, Rebecca said. So she found a different lawyer. She pulled up another document. Meet Gerald Blackwood. Patricia hired him 11 months ago, specifically for trust management consulting. And here's the smoking gun. S. She showed me an email chain between Patricia and Blackwood discussing various strategies to limit my access to trust distributions, requiring prenuptial agreements retroactively, establishing trusts within trusts, creating distribution conditions that Sarah could meet but that would effectively exclude me. None of this is legal, Rebecca said, her voice tight with professional outrage. None of it. Every single strategy they discussed violates the trust terms, but they did it anyway. How? Olivia asked, her face pale. How did she actually do it if her own lawyer told her it was illegal? Rebecca pulled up financial documents, trust accounting records that showed the pattern of distributions over the past 3 years. She didn't do it officially. Look at the distributions to James and Melissa. They're issued jointly, deposited into a joint account, exactly as the trust terms require. But distributions to Sarah? She highlighted a series of entries. They're issued to Sarah individually, deposited into an account that Patricia had Sarah open 3 years ago. The account Mom said Dad's lawyer required. Sarah whispered. She told me it was a legal necessity, that the trust had to distribute to individual beneficiaries first, and then we could transfer funds to joint accounts if we wanted. That's a lie, Rebecca said flatly. The trust has no such requirement. Patricia simply convinced Sarah to open a separate account, then consistently distributed to that account instead of to Sarah and Mark jointly. It's not technically illegal because Sarah agreed to it, but Sarah's agreement was based on false information provided by Patricia as trustee. I felt something burning in my chest, not quite anger, not quite vindication, but something hot and bitter. She lied to her own daughter, deliberately misrepresented the trust terms, all to keep me away from family money I never wanted in the first place. It gets worse, Olivia said quietly. She pushed another document toward me. This is from 2 weeks ago, right before Christmas. It was an email from Patricia to Blackwood. Gerald, the family gathering is scheduled for Christmas Day. I intend to present Sarah with the Tuscany opportunity as previously discussed. 6 months away should be sufficient to create distance and perspective. James assures me he can keep Mark occupied with work obligations if necessary. If Sarah resists, we'll need to move forward with Plan B. Formal modification of trust distributions, citing marital instability as grounds for protective measures. I'm prepared to testify that I've observed concerning changes in Sarah's behavior and judgment since the marriage. We need to act quickly before this situation becomes even more difficult to manage. I will not watch my daughter throw away her future on someone so clearly beneath her station. Azaglit. The room went silent. Sarah was crying quietly, her hand over her mouth. Olivia looked like she might be sick, and I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest where the burning had been. Plan B, I said slowly. The trust modification she threatened after Christmas. It wasn't a reaction to our standing up to her. It was already planned. She was going to do it anyway. The whole Christmas setup was designed to force a confrontation. Rebecca said, the gift exchange exclusion, the Tuscany announcement. She was creating a situation where either you'd accept the humiliation quietly, or you'd make a scene that she could use as justification for the trust modification. She wanted me to react, I said, understanding flooding through me. She wanted me to get angry, to make a scene, to give her ammunition to claim I was a destabilizing influence on Sarah. Except you didn't play along, Rebecca said with a grim smile. You brought documentation instead of emotion. You brought evidence instead of accusations. And now she's trapped, because all of this, she gestured at the documents covering the table, all of this shows premeditation, shows consciousness of wrongdoing, shows a pattern of deliberately violating the trust terms specifically to exclude you. Sarah wiped her eyes, her voice hoarse. What does this mean, legally? Rebecca leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely pleased. It means we have everything we need to petition for Patricia's removal as trustee. It means we can prove breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, misrepresentation, basically every violation of trust law that exists. And it means that if she tries to follow through on her threat to contest your father's will, we can show the court that she has a pattern of misrepresenting his intentions to serve her own agenda. Can she be charged criminally? Olivia asked. For what she did? Probably not, Rebecca admitted. Trust violations are usually civil matters unless there's clear theft or embezzlement, which we haven't found evidence of. But civil penalties can be significant. She could be forced to repay any distributions she should have made but didn't, plus interest. She could be removed as trustee. And depending on what else we find when we dig deeper, there could be grounds for Sarah to sue for emotional distress and damages. I don't want to sue her, Sarah said immediately. I don't want her money. I just want the truth out there. I want people to see what she did. I want her to stop being able to control my life. Then that's what we'll focus on, Rebecca said. Removal as trustee, full accounting of all trust activities, and a public record of exactly what happened here. The court filings will be public. Anyone can access them. Everyone will be able to see what Patricia Harrington did to maintain control of her daughter. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Judge Hampton. I just received notice that Patricia's lawyer accidentally filed privileged documents. I've made some calls. You have more support than you know. Stand firm. Then another text. This one from Senator Morrison. The legal community is watching this case closely. Patricia's actions are an insult to William's memory and to the practice of trust law itself. You won't fight this battle alone. And another, from Richard. I've informed our professional network about Patricia's breach of fiduciary standards. Her reputation in the venture capital community is finished. No one wants to work with someone who would betray her own family's trust so thoroughly. I showed the text to Sarah, watched her eyes widen as message after message came in from her father's former colleagues, from family friends, from people we barely knew who'd heard about the case and wanted to offer support. It's spreading, Olivia said, checking her own phone. People are talking about it, about Mom, about what she did. Good, Sarah said, her voice hardening. Let them talk. Let everyone see exactly who she is. Rebecca's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her eyebrows rose. It's Patricia's lawyer, the one she hired after Morrison refused to help her Blackwood. She put it on speaker. Miss Chen. The voice was smooth, professional, with an undercurrent of panic. This is Gerald Blackwood. I'm calling to discuss a possible settlement in the trust matter. I'm listening, Rebecca said neutrally. My client is willing to acknowledge certain irregularities in trust management. She's prepared to step down as trustee, ensure proper joint distributions going forward, and provide full accounting as requested. In exchange, she asks that the specifics of the trust management not be made public beyond what's already been filed. She wants us to keep quiet about the emails, I said, about the premeditation, the lies, the deliberate fraud. She wants to protect her reputation, Rebecca said into the phone. Is that correct, Mr. Blackwood? A pause. My client has worked hard to build her standing in the business community. Having these private communications made public could cause irreparable harm to her professional relationships. Good, Sarah said, leaning toward the phone. Tell my mother that's exactly what I want. I want everyone to know what she did. I want every person in her professional network, every country club member, every venture capital associate, to see exactly how she treated her own daughter's husband. How she lied and manipulated and violated her fiduciary duty, all because she couldn't accept that I married someone she didn't approve of. Sarah Blackwood started. Tell her no deal, Sarah continued, her voice cold and clear. Tell her we're moving forward with everything. Full disclosure, public record. Every email, every document, every lie exposed for everyone to see. She wanted to protect her reputation more than she wanted to honor my father's wishes? Fine. Now she gets neither. Miss Harrington, I don't think you understand the implications. I understand perfectly, Sarah interrupted. I understand that my mother spent 3 years systematically violating a trust my father established to take care of his family. I understand that she lied to me, manipulated me, and tried to destroy my marriage. I understand that she was willing to dishonor my father's memory by claiming he wasn't competent, all to maintain her control over my life. And I understand that the only way to stop people like her is to make sure everyone knows exactly what they're capable of. She looked at me, and I saw steel in her eyes, the same steel her father must have had when he sat on the federal bench, weighing evidence and delivering justice. No settlement, Sarah said firmly. We're going to trial, and we're going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Blackwood was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll convey your position to my client. But Miss Chen, Miss Harrington, I should warn you that when cornered, Patricia can be vindictive. If you refuse this settlement, she may escalate in ways you're not prepared for. She's already tried to separate me from my husband, cut me out of my father's trust, and threatened to destroy my father's reputation. Sarah said, what else can she possibly do? I've seen her destroy careers, relationships, entire families, Blackwood said quietly. She has resources and connections you can't imagine. She will use all of them. Let her try, Sarah said. We have something she doesn't have, the truth, and I'm betting that matters more than all her resources and connections combined. After Blackwood hung up, we sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Sarah had drawn a line in the sand. No settlement, no compromise, just truth, consequences, and justice. Are you sure about this? I asked quietly. Once we refuse the settlement, there's no going back. This will get uglier. Sarah took my hand, threading her fingers through mine. I'm sure. I've spent 7 years trying to keep peace with her, trying to make her happy, trying to bridge the gap between you and my family. And none of it mattered, because she never intended to accept you. She never intended to treat you with dignity or respect. She just wanted me to eventually get tired of fighting and leave you. She turned to face me fully. But I'm not tired, Mark. I'm angry, and I'm done protecting her from the consequences of her own cruelty. If she wants a war, she'll get one. And this time, I'm fighting to win. Olivia stood up and hugged her sister fiercely. We're fighting to win, she corrected. All of us. I looked at these 2 women sisters who'd been raised in privilege and comfort, who'd been taught that maintaining appearances mattered more than truth, who'd been groomed to value reputation over integrity, and I watched them choose differently, choose harder, choose right. Then let's finish this, I said. Together. Rebecca smiled and started typing. I'll file our response to the settlement offer within the hour. Rejection, full disclosure, request for expedited trial date. By tomorrow morning, everyone in the legal community will know that Patricia Harrington tried to settle and you refused. And they'll want to know why, Olivia added, which means they'll look at the public filings. They'll see the emails, the documentation, everything. By next week, Rebecca said, Patricia's reputation will be in tatters. By next month, she'll be removed as trustee. And by the time this case is finished, everyone will know exactly what she did and why. Sarah leaned against me, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Outside our apartment window, the city was getting dark, streetlights flickering on one by one. Inside, we were planning the final battle in a war that had been brewing for 7 years. But for the first time since this all began, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Hope. Not just for victory, but for healing, for justice, for a future where truth mattered more than money, where character mattered more than connections, where love mattered more than status. We were going to fight. We were going to win. And we were going to do it the right way, with evidence, with integrity, with the law on our side. Patricia had taught us one final lesson, though she'd never intended to. Sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to refuse to compromise with people who have no intention of treating you fairly. Sometimes peace isn't worth the price of your dignity. Sometimes you have to fight. The trial took place on a cold morning in late February. Not a full trial, just a hearing for Sarah's petition to remove Patricia as trustee. But the courtroom was packed. Judge Martinez, a woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and a reputation for suffering no nonsense, reviewed the documents with the kind of meticulous attention that made lawyers nervous. Patricia sat at the defendant's table with Blackwood, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the armrests of her chair. Rebecca presented our case methodically. The emails showing premeditation, the financial records showing systematic exclusion, the testimony from Judge Hampton about William's explicit intentions, the expert witness explaining how Patricia's actions violated every standard of trustee conduct. Patricia's defense was predictable. She'd been protecting family assets, exercising reasonable discretion, acting in what she believed were the best interests of the trust. Blackwood tried to frame her actions as prudent management rather than deliberate manipulation. Judge Martinez wasn't buying it. Mrs. Harrington, she said, her voice cutting through Blackwood's arguments, I've read these emails multiple times. You explicitly discussed ways to violate the trust terms. Your own lawyer warned you this would be illegal, and you hired different counsel to help you do it anyway. Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Martinez held up her hand. I've been practicing trust law for 30 years. I've seen families fight over money countless times, but I've rarely seen such a clear pattern of deliberate breach of fiduciary duty motivated purely by personal prejudice. The courtroom was silent. Your husband established this trust with clear, unambiguous language about how his children and their spouses should be provided for. You violated those terms systematically because you disapproved of your daughter's choice of husband. That's not trust management. That's trust abuse. She looked directly at Sarah. Miss Chen, your petition for removal of trustee is granted. The court will appoint an independent trustee to manage this trust going forward. Your mother will be required to provide full accounting of all trust activities, and any distributions that should have been made jointly but weren't will be corrected retroactively with interest. Patricia's face went white. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, I'm ordering that all court documents in this case remain publicly accessible. The legal community and the public have a right to see what happens when trustees violate their fiduciary duties. Perhaps it will serve as a warning to others. She brought down her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. We walked out of that courthouse into pale winter sunlight. Sarah was crying, but they were tears of relief, of vindication, of finally being able to breathe after years of holding everything in. Patricia tried to approach us in the hallway, but Rebecca stepped between us. My client has nothing to say to you, Mrs. Harrington. Sarah, please. Patricia's voice cracked. her perfect composure finally shattering. Sarah stopped, turned. For a moment, I thought she might engage, might give her mother the confrontation Patricia seemed to want. Instead, she said quietly, "You taught me a lot, Mom. You taught me what unconditional love isn't. You taught me that some people value control more than connection. You taught me that standing up for what's right sometimes means losing people you love." She took my hand. "And you taught me that I made the right choice 7 years ago when I married this man. Because in all those years of you testing him, judging him, trying to break us apart, he never stopped being kind. Never stopped having integrity. Never stopped choosing love over bitterness." She wiped her eyes. "I hope someday you figure out what you lost. Not the control over the trust. You never really had that anyway. But the relationship with your daughter, that was real. That mattered. And you threw it away because you couldn't accept that I chose my own path." We walked away then, leaving Patricia standing in the courthouse hallway with her expensive lawyer and her shattered reputation and the hollow victory of being right about nothing that mattered. 6 months later, we had dinner at our apartment. Sarah, Olivia, Judge Hampton and his wife, Senator Morrison, and Eleanor, Richard and Thomas. The food was simple. The wine was moderately priced. The conversation was real. Olivia had graduated with her MBA and started working for a nonprofit financial consulting firm. She'd moved into her own apartment but came over for dinner twice a week. She and Sarah had grown closer than they'd ever been, bonded by truth and choice rather than obligation. James had reached out once, a stiff email suggesting family counseling. Sarah had politely declined. Some bridges, once burned, weren't meant to be rebuilt. Patricia had disappeared from public life. Her venture capital firm had quietly dissolved. Her social circle had contracted to those few people who valued loyalty over integrity. And Sarah and I? We were exactly where we'd always been, in our modest apartment with our rescue dog, teaching and working and building a life based on love rather than status. To truth, Senator Morrison said, raising his glass. To family, Olivia added, smiling at her sister. To choosing right over easy, Sarah said, looking at me with eyes full of love and hard-won peace. To all of that, I said, and to Christmas dinners that actually feel like Christmas. We drank, we ate, we laughed. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent and clean, covering the old scars, making everything look new again. And in our small apartment, surrounded by people who'd chosen truth over comfort and love over control, I finally understood what family was supposed to mean. Not the family you're born into, the family you build.